U.S. airports.
I'm Marjorie Egan, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett on the rise of sepsis cases in Massachusetts and the rise in IV drip bars in Boston. Then we'll check in with Bobbi Gibb, celebrating 60 years since she became the first woman to complete the Boston Marathon. Then we'll end the show with you. Can you spend 5 minutes from your house without noise? Do you constantly need the noise of headphones when you go for a walk or anyplace else? Or are you like Jim, who has the radio on 24 hours a day? Weigh in next on BPR Live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump says there are constructive conversations happening with Iran, and he says until Friday he'll pause any U.S. bombing of Iranian power plants. But Iran's foreign ministry says there are no talks happening, only that the U.S. sent messages through friendly countries to Iran and that Iran responded. NPR's Aya Batrawi says it will be hard for any kind of ceasefire talks to get started.
There's just no trust. Tehran and Washington were just in talks last month when the U.S. and Israel decided to launch this war. And with Iran's top leaders killed, including its top negotiator last week, it's unclear who would be speaking on behalf of Iran. Now, Trump has laid out stiff demands for ending the war. He's talked about no nuclear enrichment, degrading its missiles, and he's been clear about Iran cutting off support to Shia militias in Lebanon and Iraq. But Iran has rejected these demands even long before this war began, and it says now that it even wants compensation.
NPR's Aya Batrawi reporting. Afghanistan's Taliban rulers have released American citizen Dennis Coyle, who'd been detained for a year. Earlier this month, the State Department designated Afghanistan a sponsor of wrongful detention or hostage diplomacy. NPR's Dia Hadid has more.
Afghanistan and Iran were singled out by the State Department in early March for their practice of detaining Americans as a form of leverage. Coyle was detained in January 2025 while in the Afghan capital, Kabul. He's described as a 64-year-old academic who focused on Afghanistan's many language communities. It's not clear why the Taliban detained him. Two Taliban spokespeople did not respond to requests for comment, but in a statement, the Afghan Foreign Ministry said Coyle's release came on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr, the celebration that marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan. Dia Hadid, NPR News, Moira.
President Trump has deployed ICE agents to about a dozen airports across the country. They're supposed to help TSA agents who are not getting paid because of the partial shutdown at the Department of Homeland Security. Many TSA agents have quit or called out. From Georgia Public Broadcasting, Sophie Gratas has more on the situation at Atlanta's main airport.
On Monday, most of the ICE agents at the airport were seen walking around near the main security checkpoints and observing the area. That's after wait times reached up to 5 hours that morning. Ann Deming had just arrived in Atlanta when she said she got some help from one ICE agent finding the airport shuttles.
And he was like, oh yeah, just go downstairs. I mean, nothing too major, but yeah. But super nice, super helpful.
The airport website that would normally show wait times instead just tells passengers to come 4 hours ahead of their flight. And even with a little lull on Monday evening, TSA officers in Atlanta told me as long as they're not paid, there's likely no end in sight to long lines at peak hours. For NPR News, I'm Sophie Gratas.
On Wall Street, stocks are mixed. The Dow's up 80 points. The Nasdaq is down 100. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Add Worcester to the ever-growing list of communities that'll host World Cup watch parties this summer. The Worcester Guardian reports that the city is set to host multiple public watch parties and soccer-themed events during the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This after Worcester was selected to receive state funding as part of a $10 million grant announced by the Healy-Driscoll administration. The funding program supports fan celebrations and community watch parties across Massachusetts during the big tournament, which runs from June 13th through July 9th. In addition to Worcester, funding will also support events in Boston, Cambridge, Brockton, Lowell, Lexington, Weymouth, and 10 other communities across the state. And all the scuttlebutt regarding the potential return of rent control in Massachusetts is having a definite impact on local housing markets. Boston 25 reports while some renters say relief by way of rent control can't come soon enough, others warn that it could make things worse. For instance, some in the industry say the possibility of rent control is already influencing pricing, with landlords raising rents on vacant units now in anticipation of having their hands tied in the future. And some real estate professionals argue that rent control could actually limit housing supply in the state, eventually driving more people out of Massachusetts in the long run. Rent control was banned in is finalized, the debate about it is already heating up big time. Partly cloudy, mid-40s today, 38 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the maxim that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. This is NPR.
You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you. Tomorrow, the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell, will be with us here at the library, plus special live music for some great young musicians from the Salt Lake Incubator, and Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys. He's going to stop by to tell us about their performance this Saturday at the No Kings rally on Boston Common. One more announcement, Jim. Friday, Maura Healey, the governor, will be with us here at the library at 11 o'clock. Hello.
Hi. And by the way, a lot of people are asking if Ken Casey is going to be here or Zoom in. He will be here physically to talk to us about Saturday's big event. So we're starting the show with the job market check-in. For young graduates looking to enter the working world, the specter of AI is looming large. In the immediate term, we're in what the New York Times calls a low-hire, low-fire market. New entry-level jobs are almost impossible to come by, and if you do land an interview or connection, you'll wait months to hear anything, if you ever hear back at all. And in the manufacturing world, Jeff Bezos is raising $100 billion to buy manufacturing firms so he can experiment with firing workers and replacing them with robots and AI-related things. So we're opening the lines to check in with job seekers among us, or the parents of those job seekers, or the hirers or non-hirers of job seekers at 877-301-8970. As GBH's Kurt Carapezza reported this week from a job fair where lines of students were told, quote, I don't really have any openings right now, which begs the question, why show up to a job fair as a company if you don't have any jobs at the fair? The number is 877-301-8970 to call or text. Are the kids all right? And where are all the jobs in Trump's America? A jobs check-in, 877-301-8970. Well, I can answer my own question, courtesy of Jerome Powell, temporarily head of the Fed. No private sector jobs have been created. The job creation rate is near zero in the private sector.
I think he might have enjoyed saying
I think
that
he might
since the
have.
president
He doesn't
was
seem
out
like
to
a fun kind of guy.
Yeah, here's his quote: "Zero net job creation in the private sector," which of course we've never had in our history of the United States of America. I mean, there have been stories. It's not funny because it's really depressing for a lot of these kids who are just out of college, and some kids that didn't get a college degree either. There have been stories all over the place about this. The things that you thought were safe careers, you spent all this money to go to college to be a software or a coder or something like that. Those jobs are not in demand. Tech jobs are not in demand. Media jobs, accounting jobs, consulting jobs, software development, like I just said. And there was a massive story of interviewing young people in the New York Times over the weekend that talked about how it's really getting to people's psyches. This woman said she's going to go out and hire a therapist because she's so upset. How you're applying, as you said, over and over and over to these companies and not even getting...
What you heard Jamie and Zoe said this morning, it's one thing not to get a response to an application. People, didn't you say that people who have done interviews don't even get a thank you rejection? They get nothing in many cases. By the way, while we cited AI, there's another problem about why there's so few jobs. It's called congestion. Do you know who are doing the congesting? Old people.
Oh, that's right.
Who don't leave their jobs.
That's
I wonder
us,
who
Jim.
they're talking about,
That's us,
Marjorie.
yeah.
No, I'm serious, by the way. That's one of the reasons is that older people are working longer for obvious, painful reasons.
Yeah, the reasons is they can't afford to retire.
Exactly.
That's the big reason. But a lot of people are talking about how entry-level jobs don't seem to be entry-level anymore. They're applying for an entry-level position, and then somebody says, well, you need 5 years experience and such for the entry-level position. I know what you're reading.
Do you see what Anonymous Texter says?
ICE is hiring.
ICE. Well, there's a story I just read right before we went on the air. I didn't read, actually, read the first few paragraphs because the show was starting. That the New York Times, I think, did a piece Trump, whenever there's a problem, ICE is the solution. Whether it's the TSA people or obviously it's to do policing and killing, they're the people who do the job. So he has obviously a deep affection. I assume that's because of his good buddy, Steve Miller.
Well,
877-301-8970.
You can understand. I mean, I don't think a lot of us would want to be ICE agents at this juncture, but you can understand if you get a $50,000 signing bonus.
Why would you say people sadists and people who don't like other people would love to be ICE agents?
Well, I like to think that most of us are not sadists, Jim. This other person.
The President of the United States is a sadist, so I think that, and I'm serious. I mean, I don't know why you think that.
Did you see the latest out of the San Francisco airport? The ICE agents handcuffing this woman while her child is screaming next to her. I believe it was at the airport there. It was absolutely awful. Anyway, these kids that were talking in this Times story said that they can't get overnight jobs at Amazon. They can't get overnight jobs as production assistants in the movie business, which used to be easy because they pay you nothing. The kind of jobs they can get are jobs that there's no pay at all. And this one person said she applied for 200 jobs and got 4 interviews. So, gosh, if you're coming out of college with all that debt, you've paid like $80,000 a year to go to a private school. Imagine how disheartening this is.
By the way, can I read a couple of texts here?
Yeah.
Anonymous texter, the dropping bombs industry looks to be growing. That's one. Anonymous texter, this is incredible. I'm a dog. I assume this is true. I'm a dog walker. At the dog park last week, a group of students were studying the dogs to create a dog walking AI. We're all screwed. And by the way, the guy who's been trashing me, I think legitimately, frankly, saying if you're so concerned and you're always chastising people for not doing anything, why don't you cancel your Amazon account? And while I haven't canceled, and I have to give him credit, by the way, because he's been relentless, I am doing much more, I'm doing what I preach. I'm shopping much more locally. And doing Amazon because he's embarrassed me, frankly, and I shouldn't have taken that. But he's done a good job.
You're a better person than I am because I still have my Amazon.
Well, I still do, but I'm doing it a lot less. 877-301-8970. Again, whether you're a parent, whether you're a young job seeker, or if you're a business leader who ordinarily would be hiring, or maybe you are hiring. You can tell us what the job hiring situation is with your company and why. Demetra, in your truck, you were first. Hi there.
Hi, Demetra.
Hello, Demetra.
Hi, I'm a big fan and a supporter.
Thank you very much.
I have a very small business. I'm a landscape designer, and I am looking to hire people.
Oh.
And it's very hard to find people who want to work, apparently. So I don't know.
Why do you say that, Demetra? Why do you say that? What experience have you had that's been difficult finding people?
It's just difficult finding people. I mean, people, and I've got a lot of people in the business that are also looking for full-time laborers, people who are, want to work outside, and it's very hard. So it's a hard working job, and, ICE has gone after so many people in this business. Yeah. But a lot of kids who are in college or who are right out of college who can't get work, and I know how frustrating it is. I really feel for them, but there is work out there. They just might need to be out in the outdoors.
Demetra, do you want to? You don't have to, obviously. Do you want to say the name of your company if you choose, or no?
Well, it's pretty basic. It's Gardens by Demetra, and I
Gardens by
design and
Demetra,
install, and I maintain landscape. So yeah.
Check them out. If you're interested, go to Gardens by Demetra. Demetra, thanks for your call. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Speaking of companies, Amazon taking away a lot of these companies, one of these kids talked about they finally got a job, even though this wasn't what they were interested in, at Saks Fifth Avenue, working in the restaurant there, and they found out Saks Fifth Avenue was shutting down because a lot of big retail businesses are shutting down because of competition from online sales. And
I'm sorry, last weekend or the weekend before, I'm not sure, I was with a common friend of ours. And I was complaining about a particular person who was not responding to my texts, and he said I shouldn't take it as personally as I'm taking it. And that's a text. Can you imagine you want a job, you're desperate, you even get an interview, And when the people decide you're not the person to be hired, they don't show you the decency of writing you a note saying thank you for your time and I'm sorry we decided to, whatever they say, go in another direction. I mean, how incredibly unkind that is.
Here's Michelle, who's cleaning up her living room as she texts us. She says, we spent 20 years demanding that these kids study STEM. Now Trump has canceled scores of research grants. If I weren't an artist, I'd really be ticked off. And then somebody else says that it's not just in Boston, and it's not just recent grads. My son is 31. His career after school never quite got off the ground thanks to COVID. Just when he landed the entry-level job that would have launched his career, the shutdown of the resort industry killed it. Since the economy's downturn has made movement impossible, a whole generation of talented young people has been lost.
So here is an anonymous texter. It's a good time to be a therapist. That's one job. And then another text, join the military, you hippies. That is a text from President Bonespur is texting us. 877-301-8097. Ruth Ann in Lowell. Hey.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie. Long time.
Thank you.
Third time.
Thank you.
I want to tell you that people are looking for jobs. My sister is a school bus driver, and they are looking for school bus drivers. Maybe ICE could come in and drive the school buses. I mean, no guns or anything, but the kids kind of get out of control, so that might be good. But she gets good pay. And
what does she pay?
She get a lot of
what does she pay?
Yeah.
What do you pay for when you're driving a bus?
Well, she said her husband passed. She said, "My God, I made $80,000 last year." I said, "Wow, good for you."
Well, it's also a part-time, Ruth Ann, it's a part-time
driving
job,
a bus.
isn't it?
Wow, that's pretty good.
Ruth Ann, it's part-time, right?
Pension. Yep. Yeah, it's part-time. You drive it in the morning, you drive it in the afternoon. Sometimes you call for field trip, and she's older now, so she doesn't want to do those. But, yeah.
So, Ruth Ann, let me ask your advice here. If you do it in the morning, do it in the afternoon, could you do it in the morning, afternoon, and fit a radio show in from 11 to 1, or no?
Oh, sure.
Okay, well, then we'll be there. Ruth Ann, thanks for your call. Best to your sister. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Emily in Boston. Did you read this one? You didn't.
No.
I graduated from college in 2009 at the height of the recession. I, quote, bit the bullet and took a job bartending. Now I'm a regional leadership position for a large alcoholic beverage supplier. This is a good one. Taking chances in a tough situation can make a world of difference. That was a great text.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, that's often what happens, too. You get in some job that you think is going to go nowhere and ends up opening up other opportunities in the industry that you never even thought about. Kenny, a dealer at Foxwood Casino, he says we can't hire people there fast enough. He says the problem is nobody wants to do the job, and we have a bunch of people like myself that have been there for 3 decades. I'm getting ready to retire or move on to another place. But he says they can't hire. I don't know what they pay people to deal at casinos, but he says they're ready to hire people there.
Here's Zachary. I'm also having trouble getting a job. Right now, I'm a current student at Wentworth Institute of Technology. It's been very difficult to even get a job anywhere in Boston or somewhere outside of Boston. I really need a job. I'm desperate, trying to find an internship somewhere for the summer, but with the economy being so low, it's been very difficult. That is really horrible. That is really horrible. Zachary, good luck to you. Thanks for writing.
Here's a Catholic texter. It says, I feel like I'm going to confession. I also still have my Amazon Prime account. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I continue to sin. I would be willing to give up Amazon Prime if both of you commit to giving it up as well.
Well, I'm doing better. I'm getting there. I'll let you know. Can I get back to Bezos, speaking of Amazon, for a minute? It's one thing. I'm not defending this. It's one thing if you own a company and you say, I want to streamline, so I'm going to get rid of some workers to see what AI or robots can do. I'm not defending it. He is going out of his way to buy companies, to fire people, to do a robotics kind of experience as an experiment to see if it can be replicated across all of manufacturing.
Well, I think we know,
such gratuitous screwing.
We know he's and it's really hard to read the Washington Post now, even though they have some really great political reporters still there. They have some ridiculous stories.
The editorials are nauseating.
Yeah, and some of
even
of the stories they're talking about how heroic Vice President Vance is going to go out and look for waste, fraud, and abuse. You know,
in a news story?
In a video. They did a long video about this. I'm thinking to myself, you know, we've been talking about waste, fraud, and abuse in the government for as long as we've been talking about trickle-down economics. And it's kind of like, doesn't everybody get it? You know, we seem to be unable to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, although we did fire Kristi Noem, so I guess that was the start.
She still she's still working on March 31st. We're going to talk about her later. And then she has a job as that special envoy. Yeah. To that thing that doesn't exist.
But she can't spend $4,000 a day on hair and makeup. You know, you go to a lot of weddings now, they have hair and makeup people. Yeah. They have the bride, the mothers of the bride, the brothers of the groom, like 5 bridesmaids. Nobody's paying $4,000.
That was one person for her.
That's what I mean.
Here is James.
For all those people.
In Central Mass, my husband went back to school at age 30 to get a STEM degree. He's been in and out of work, but the most disheartening thing is the only good-paying jobs are the ones tied to weapons manufacturing or surveillance. Is this what we're preparing our kids in STEM careers to do? Everything else paid poorly for someone with an advanced math degree with a debt in the family. Boy.
Wow.
877-301-8970. Costs, I believe, in Grafton. Hi.
Hello.
Hi there.
Long-time supporter. This is my first time calling in.
We really appreciate it, Costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So altogether, I have about 15 years experience working in marketing, specifically media. And I was laid off about 3 years ago, and I spent the last 3 years just endlessly looking, applying for jobs. I think at the last count it was like 150 jobs. So I have 2 young kids, and ultimately I got a job at the post office because I just needed to, pay bills. Mm-hmm. But happy to report that I finally landed a full-time gig, and I started last week.
Congratulations.
Doing what? Cos?
Yeah, back in marketing, thankfully.
How hard is this beyond financially, obviously it's very difficult. How hard has this been sort of psychically for you, this 3 years in search and doing the post office thing, that sort of thing?
Oh, it's just excruciating. I think when I first started working in this field, I was able to, because, I work specifically within like social media, and it was like a hot career at the time. So I was able to kind of bounce around and I was getting paid well. But I think over that time, I saw the burst of that bubble, and they're not paying what they used to, and they're really not hiring the way they used to. Unfortunately, I think the bubble has burst.
Well, we were both really happy you found something you're happy with. I hope it works out well.
Yeah,
Stay in touch with us.
I'm so glad that worked. That did work out.
Thank you for the call.
Here's Olivia. Olivia says, I'm a 19-year-old student at a small college in Minnesota. It's frankly disturbing to listen to people preach about taking jobs in landscaping and bus driving when I'm paying $100,000 a year for an education. The problem isn't getting kids into blue-collar jobs. It's about letting kids get jobs that they're qualified for and have worked hard for that are way too competitive.
Yeah. It's really horrible.
Yeah, but I think sometimes you end up having to start in jobs like that you're overqualified for to kind of segue. You know what I mean?
Well, like that person talked about doing the bartending thing, which she was not dying to do, but you take what you can and work your whatever off. And in that case, I'm not trying to be Pollyanna-ish about it, but in that case, obviously, it worked out for her down the line.
Or you could end up being the landscape designer, owner of the company yourself. Wouldn't you like to be a landscape designer?
No. I don't like getting my hands.
I think it would be a great job.
You would love. Well, I
would love it. Well, I have no eye. I have no eye. I wish I did have an eye. Because if I did have an eye, I would love to. I like being in the dirt.
We haven't said this for years, but Marjorie's thing, whenever this dries up, this job thing we have, wants to be a flower arranger.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Yeah, well, I'm not very good at that either.
How much of a market is there for flower arrangers?
I don't know, but I like to arrange flowers. I've gotten fairly good at it. I'm okay. I can sort of do it, but I'm not, I don't have a great eye. I'm not a visual person. Derek in Windsor, thank you for calling.
Hello, Derek.
Good morning, Jim. You and that beautiful lady that
Which
you have
one is
here
that,
beside
Derek?
you.
Is that Marjorie?
Huh?
Is that Marjorie you're talking about?
That's right. C'est moi.
How are you, Derek? It's good to talk to you.
I've never seen her, but by her voice I can tell. So this is what I have to say. The main reason why I think a lot of people, you have people that are lazy, just don't want to work. That's one.
Yeah.
The next thing, the jobs are not paying a living wage. And if you look at the cost of living today, it's very discouraging. If you're not a person that really, really wants a job, you're not encouraged to go out to find one. I was looking at the studies where they say the earning today is equal to what people used to make in the 70s. Yeah. Can you imagine that? So we are nowhere encouraging people to work. And I'm saying there are people that want jobs, but the pay and the amount of work that they want you to do for the little job. 2008, when the economy crashed, the work order has changed. It's one person doing 6 people job.
Yeah, but Derek, can I tell you,
to put up with that.
I agree with what you said.
Culture, they
I have
call
to say, the lazy thing, I don't know why. I don't see that at all. I mean, obviously there's some, but I think the vast majority of young people are dying to work and in many cases desperate. I don't see laziness as a problem. I think the second thing, availability and wages are a real issue. Derek, we love when you call. Call us again soon. Thank you.
Hey, we have our buddy Callie on the line.
Who I think is employed.
Yes,
something happened we don't know anything about. You're still employed, right?
I still am. But,
okay, good. What's up?
I've been encouraged by some of the stuff I've heard from people. But here's the thing, there's a tip for young people.
What?
Because this is driving me crazy for those of us who interview and my friends and other companies who have jobs. The people who get them eventually, for the few that are available, it's very hard out here, are the ones who know something about the job, have bothered to prepare, and are ready to engage in a conversation that lets the potential employer know what they know about it. I am shocked by the number of people who've done no research, who know nothing about it. They're just, I guess, applying because they want to check, but that's insulting to the people who you're trying to work with.
So if you had Callie,
who are you?
Yeah, have you had a bad experience in the last few days or what?
No, it's not the last few days. It's been over the years, and I've just been talking about it with other people.
I agree with you.
To see if maybe my experience was, unique, and it is not. So people who are really good are losing out because they don't do that extra work.
Callie, can I tell you something? And I'm not just saying because you said I should have said this earlier. Whenever Marjorie and I have participated in interviews for whatever jobs we've had together for the last quarter century, every time an applicant comes in and satisfies the criterion that you're talking about, namely knows a lot about what we're doing, listens, asks questions about, it has huge impact on us, I know, in terms of decision making. So we're totally with you. Callie, we're glad you're still employed. Thanks so much for your call.
You don't want to start out the interview by saying, who are you? Why am I here? What is the job? That's not a good tip, Marjorie.
Yeah, that is a good tip. You want to kind of know.
So your tip is, let me just be clear. Don't say to the people who are interviewing you, who are you and where am I?
That's right.
That is not a
good place
initial,
to start.
Okay. Whatever.
Good luck to the people that are trying to get work. I know it's very, very frustrating. And as Jerome Powell said, and he really said it with vigor, that it's not been this bad for new graduates in history because he's mad at Donald Trump. That's why he said it, I'm sure. Anyway, that's all the time we have. Coming up after this quick break, Michael Curry, for head of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, is going to talk to us about cuts in Medicaid and a visit yesterday by the House Speaker.
Well, not yet.
He's not the House Speaker. He's what do you call him when he's in the minority guy?
He's the minority leader.
Minority leader. Okay, Hakeem Jeffries, who came to Boston. I'm Marjorie Regan, Houston Brady. This is BPR GBH. NEPM. We'll be right back.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Ken Burns. For decades, he's been one of America's great storytellers, bringing the country's triumphs, contradictions, and unfinished work to the screen. Now, with a new series on Henry David Thoreau, which he executive produced, Ken Burns joins us to talk about history, democracy, and America at 2:50. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Landvest Christie's International Real Estate, an independent brokerage representing residential and investment properties for buyers and sellers across New England and the Adirondacks since 1968. More at landvest.com.
And White Flower Farm, a mail-order plant nursery in Connecticut, offering garden plants, growing supplies, and gifts for gardeners. More at whiteflowerfarm.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A hell of a show tomorrow. AG is with us from 11 to 12. Andrea Joy Campbell answer our questions and yours. Then a special Wednesday live music from two bands involved with the Great Salt Lick Incubator, Claire Ernst and Danny Offline, and the leader of the featured band, I guess you could call it, at the No Kings rally on Saturday, the Dropkick Murphys. Ken Casey's going to stop by in person at the library, talk about Saturday, talk about the state of affairs in our country in March of 2026. Friday, it's Ask the Governor. Governor Healy, 11 to 12 at the library. Joined now on Zoom by Michael Curry, President and CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, on the national board of the NAACP. Hello there, Michael.
Hey, good to see you both.
Hey, Michael, I just inadvertently gave Hakeem Jeffries a new job, called him the leader of the House. He's the House Minority Leader. But in any case, he was here yesterday in town along with and spoke with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, and you were there too, talking about the affordable health care credit cuts. So what was it all about?
Yeah, so one is credit to our Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who brought her a minority leader who could be the Speaker of the House in just a few months. But Hakeem Jeffries was in town, and a few of us had a sit-down table conversation with him. Small group, John Barrows, the Convention Center Authority, myself, Mass Senior Action, and a 99-year-old woman from Mass Senior Action. Beautiful woman who shared her perspective, as well as Mariama White-Hammond, Willie Bodrick, Dr. Thea James, and Dr. Guy Fish. So we got to talk about a few things. One is the 16th anniversary of the Affordable Care Act being passed, and the 20th anniversary of Chapter 58 being passed here in Massachusetts in 2006. One, in this moment, this year, while we celebrate both, and then we can also talk about the threats on both, as we now know Medicaid cuts are looming. And their message, at least Congresswoman Presley's and Leader Jeffries, was we need to invest in health care and access and not in war. Many of us who are on the panel were there sharing our perspective on the challenges we're seeing on the ground. Great conversation. He listened, he took notes, and then he parroted back much of what he got from us, including the phenomenal 99-year-old woman, black woman who he heard from. He shared that back in his comments after the meeting.
You know, when you mentioned Ayanna Pressley, she was, I remembered, I think it was in her first campaign for Congress, but maybe a subsequent campaign, or maybe all of them. She tells this really creates this stark image of getting on the subway, the T, in Roxbury and riding it to Harvard Square, and talks about the life expectancy differential, which I think was in the 2-decade range. And there's a new report out which I guess not that there's a gap, but that it's expanding. The headline in the Globe: life expectancy gap between black residents and other Bostonians has doubled over the past decade. One, are you surprised? I assume the answer is no. And two, why has it doubled?
Well, one is credit to Dr. Ojikutu and the Boston Health Commission. We have one of the most progressive, forward-thinking public health commissions in the nation in Boston. Yeah. And this goes back to Barbara Ferrer when she identified racism as a public health crisis in this nation. So we have now a phenomenal leader. And their most recent Live Long and Well report illustrates, underscores, creates some urgency around these life expectancy differences. You live in Dorchester. You live less years than other parts of the city. You live in Roxbury, you live in the least the number of years than other parts of the city. And the same is true for Mattapan and other parts of the city. I think we have to now come to terms with this. Now, I'm going to say something different, I think, than many others will, which is this didn't come out of the sky. This is years of neglect, ignoring communities, delayed access to care, unfettered access to drugs in our neighborhoods, over-policing and under-investigation, that if we go back just 60 years ago, we had a very broken and segregated hospital system in this country. We know that in our lifetimes, all three of our lifetimes, our healthcare system didn't treat black and brown folks the same. So why are we surprised that there's a 23-year life expectancy between Roxbury and Back Bay? It is born out of decades, if not centuries, of abuse, neglect, experimentation, and the infrastructures and poor environments where we place Black and brown people. So, I mean, the report illustrates it. What I'm excited about is that Dr. Ojukwu report then pulls a group of us together as an advisory group to start thinking about what we can do about it around economic mobility, improving access to nutritious, affordable, culturally relevant food, improving access to safe spaces for active living, and expanding disease screening and management. She's now putting what we should have known into the consciousness of the city and the state, and now we have to turn it into action.
Well, speaking of action, am I not right that it hasn't Mayor Wu invested several $1 million to do some screenings, which I assume is at least part of the solution? But what is beyond, assuming I'm right, what more should be done short term to address this other than just rhetoric?
Yeah, I think, money matters. And
we're losing you.
Data shows us that for Black men particularly, we are the most likely to live shorter lives, 76 years
Black
compared to 85.
Yeah.
And what's disturbing is that we know that that's preventable death. We can get to the cancer screenings. We can get to treating diabetes before it is a death sentence. We can actually save people through harm reduction and engagement with those with substance use disorder. And that what she's calling out in this report is preventable death can be addressed through the Boston Public Health Commission in partnership with everybody listening on this call, those individuals and those organizations. We can actually save lives. It is unacceptable that you can get on a train and live longer. Mm-hmm. It is unacceptable that depending on the color of your skin or the neighborhood you live in, not only do you live shorter, but Jim and Marjorie, something that we don't illustrate enough, you live longer sick. Mm-hmm. So you spend years dealing with diabetes and cancer and heart disease and substance use disorder way before you actually die.
We're talking to Michael Curry, head of the League of Community Health Centers of Massachusetts.
Michael, we talked before about Hakeem Jeffries coming to town, talked about these the Obamacare subsidies not being extended, and we know that Massachusetts is projected to lose as much as $3.5 billion in federal cuts to Medicaid. So they're not fully here yet, right? That they haven't really come yet, but this story in Commonwealth Beacon talks about one program that could be decimated, which is home health aids for people. Helping people with eating and dressing and bathing and all that, so they can stay in their home. Getting $100 million in cuts
proposed by Healy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one is all of us just need to think about our families, that when we get to that point, we have loved ones who are ill, who are disabled, who are struggling to take care of themselves, and that we know that it's cheaper for them to be at home with assistance than to be in a facility. It's actually safer for them to be at home. It's actually more compassionate for them to be at home. And 50,000 people in the Commonwealth rely on personal care attendants to live at home with dignity. And we are now in this place because of the federal cuts of having to think about what we can cut, curtail, eligibility, benefits, access, services here in the Commonwealth. So while we take a pause to think about these federal cuts, they have local implications. And a $100 million cut to the PCA program is going to be devastating. When you think about these PCAs, these personal care attendants are helping people bathe, dress, eat, go to the bathroom, meal prep, and so many things that they do. They are majority women, people of color, and quite frankly, immigrants. They speak your language. They know your culture. They have a shared passion for these communities that are impacted by disease and disability. I am concerned. This was done in conjunction with the PCA community. I'd imagine, based on my conversations with Kiame Mahania, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Mike Levine in Medicaid, that this will be the roadmap for a lot of other cuts. Bring people to the table and determine what they can and agree on to cut in the short term and maybe the midterm, with hopefully some hope that we get the funding back for these programs.
The thing I don't understand, Marjorie touched on this in her question, Michael, and I'm very glad you added the thing. This was in the cut, which seems really deep to me, was in consultation with the people in that part of the healthcare budget, so at least they got to weigh in. But if everything I read is true, the personal home health care attendants save money because it's much cheaper to help somebody at home, not to mention they arguably lead a better life. But it costs a lot less than having someone in a facility. So in the short term, it saves money. In the long term, it's going to cost us money, no?
I would argue it costs money and lives. And here's the tough thing said out loud, the quiet thing said out loud, which is budgets are value decisions.
Yeah,
and quite frankly, whenever there's major cuts to federal funding or state funding, then people have to make decisions, a business decision, about whether they cut critical programs and services that may save us money in the out years, but immediately created savings today. That's the unfortunate part, the truth said out loud, which is whether it's GLP-1s and the fact that we're saying we're going to cut back on GLP-1s, though 1 in 3 people are pre-diabetic, and keeping them from becoming diabetic keeps them from being sicker, being sicker with diabetes, being in our emergency rooms, being inpatient. We are making decisions today that are about saving costs to save our system today. It is the thing that people won't tell you that I'm going to say on your show, that quite frankly, these are short-term solutions with long-term impacts.
We're going to broach this with the governor on Friday when she's with us at the library at 11 o'clock.
So explain this to me. This what Governor Healy wants to do is persuade the legislature to, quote unquote, opt out of new federal tax policies. I didn't know you could opt out of federal tax policies.
But what's interesting is I don't know either. These conversations are eye-opening when you have federal policy. So apparently, the way this works is that we know the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and one of the things that the Trump administration touts is that these taxes will save a lot of money, particularly for businesses and the wealthiest among us. I mean, that's what you hear Senator Warren and others really attacking the OB3, the big bill. So we know now that states, and Massachusetts is one of many, Maine, New York and others are trying to figure out how to either suspend or completely ignore this federal tax law so that we don't see the devastating defunding of public services in the Commonwealth. That is the moment we're in. This is $3.5 trillion spending bill, and it'll result in a precipitous decline in federal funding and state availability to state funds availability to be able to invest in those things we know that matter for people in our communities. And quite frankly, it's a matter of whether you ignore the federal policy altogether, which they call decoupling, or you do what Governor Healy is suggesting, which is to suspend it, buy us some more time to kind of figure out where these federal dollars will impact us and where we can get money to provide these services.
Well, you know, I'm wondering, since the president is ignoring laws all over the place in almost every area of the government, why maybe states can start ignoring the laws, and then the federal government can take the states.
By the way, I know she's not ignoring the law.
I know he's saying she's not, but I mean, it might not be. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. How come the feds could be the only one?
Can I change gears because we only have a couple of minutes left? The Supreme Court yesterday indicated by likely 6 conservatives voting to outlaw mail-in ballots when the ballots are cast by Election Day but received after Election Day. There are about 14 states that allow that, Massachusetts being one. By the way, it's worth noting, here's a quiz for you two. Who voted by mail-in ballot in Florida in the last several days? Michael Kerry, you want to guess? Exactly.
Donald Trump.
President Bonespur voted, and he's the leader of this effort to get rid of it. Now, while the Republican National Committee is behind this, and it's likely to happen, and I think it will cause utter chaos in November if they try to implement it in November. We don't know what the ultimate outcome is going to be. What do you see, assuming that their questions yesterday indicate a 6-3 decision to get rid of it? In a minute, what do you see the impact of this decision being, Michael Curry?
Yeah, I mean, one is, and as cliche as it sounds, elections have consequences, and this is chess, not checkers, right? We know that they want less people to show up and vote. They want to shift the voting to be more red and Republican and less Democratic and independent. And this is about how do you curtail, discourage, dissuade, so voter ID laws. And this is just another tool in the tool belt, which is to prevent the mailing ballots coming in after Election Day. We know that it takes some time for the election results to be fully realized, but the ballots don't shift coming in 3, 4, 5 days later, don't dramatically shift the outcome, but they give everybody an opportunity to exercise that franchise, which is voting. And if people can send them in and they can be counted and the final numbers can be tallied within days after the election, it hurts no one. However, this is not about whether it's good policy. This is about winning the next election. I'll tee this up for you, Jim and Marjorie, for a future show. Do one also on the United States Postal Service, which is being underfunded. Yeah. And quite frankly, the ability of the United States Postal Service to meet the needs going into this election year is another tool in their tool belt.
Michael, it's good to see you. Thanks for your thoughts. Talk to you soon. Michael
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Michael Curry, head of the Mass League of Community Health Centers and on the board of the NAACP. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to talk with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. We're going to talk to him about what's going to happen with TSA and all the backups at the airport, whether the president is actually negotiating with someone in Iran, or did he make it up so he can manipulate the oil market, and a lot of other political stuff in D.C. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Recent college graduates are really struggling in the job market, so much so that economists are highlighting rates of underemployment, tracking grads who work in jobs that don't require their degrees.
It's true what they say about the job market is a little tough right now.
But how often does this actually happen?
It's an easy question, a hard answer. Nobody has a consistent methodology to address the questions.
I'm Kirk Carapezza. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And MIT Sloan Executive Education, fueled by cutting-edge research and aided by the latest technology, professionals can choose from more than 90 in-person and online courses offered throughout the year. Executive.mit.edu. And GM Roth Design Remodeling, providing custom kitchens, bathrooms, and accessory dwelling units. Their design team works to create living-in-place solutions tailored to the needs of each home and family. More information at gmroth.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, packed show, Attorney General answering questions of yours and ours from 11 till noon. Noon, two great bands from the Salt Lick Incubator join us, and right after them, Ken Casey, the lead singer of the Dropkick Murphys. He's not performing, but he's talking about the No Kings rally on Saturday, where the Dropkicks will be performing. And Friday, the governor's here for an hour of Ask the Governor. Joined on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, man behind the great reporting project All Over the Map, which took him to North Carolina yesterday, and I assume that's where he is today. Hello there, John.
Hello from beautiful Hot Springs, North Carolina.
Ooh,
well, great to see you.
That's supposed to be beautiful, Hot Springs, North Carolina, whatever it is.
Hot
Jim.
Springs to you, Marjorie.
Hot Springs,
Thank you.
Okay.
We know what you meant, though.
I was close. Okay. So, John, we hear that the president is negotiating with a high-level person in 15 points.
We don't hear. He said.
He says. That's right. And there's a lot of skepticism there, and some are either questioning whether this was all about market manipulation to get the market up and lower the oil prices. So do we think we're negotiating, or what do people say?
Well, as we discussed many Tuesdays, sometimes the president says things that just confuse us more than give us clarity. In this case, I will say I just checked in before I dialed in, and my colleague Fred Pleitgen, who is often in Tehran and has fabulous sources in the international community, is quoting an Iranian official saying that the United States has had some outreach to the government in Tehran through intermediaries, through third-party governments, because we don't have a direct relationship with Iran, obviously. And that source told Fred Pleitgen that there are no negotiations underway, but there are some conversations about whether there's a reason to start negotiations. So when the president... That is potentially good, but I think it's another example of the president saying things that are a bit down the road from where we actually are. But the Iranians are confirming through our CNN's Fred Pleitgen that there have been some contact. The question is, does it reach the next level?
You know, by the way, he is an incredible reporter, and I've seen his reports from Tehran. The international reporters at your place are incredible, I should say, and the domestic one's pretty good too. Speaking of domestic, you're in North Carolina, and you were talking to people about the impacts of the war on Iran and in Iran on their lives and businesses. What did you find out there, John King?
I shouldn't be here is one of the main things, right? So I came here months ago, you might remember, to check in on the recovery from Hurricane Helene, which was 18 months ago this week. And I'm in Hot Springs now. I was in Marshall last night. I was up closer to Boone earlier in the day yesterday. And these people were devastated. They also have a statewide Senate race that the Democrats think they might be able to pick up, in that the former Democratic governor, Roy Cooper's running for Senate. And I'm in a district that's a Republican district. Trump carried these counties with 60% or more. The Republican congressman was elected with 58% of the vote. But the Democrats think they might, emphasis on might, have a shot here. Because they've nominated what he calls himself a mountain Democrat, a local guy, a farmer. What are people saying, Jim? If you live in rural America, what does that mean? It means you drive more. It means you need gas. If you're a farmer in rural America, you need fuel or fertilizer for your farm and your equipment on your farm and to fertilize your crops, and it's the spring. And that's about the business you're about the business now of planting your crops. I was on a farm up near Boone yesterday, helping one of the farmers out in the fields a little bit to learn a little bit about his business. And so gas prices have gone up $1 in 3.5 weeks. We passed some stations where it was $3.91. Most stations were around $3.60 a gallon for regular unleaded. That matters if you have to drive 25 minutes to the pharmacy, 25 minutes to the grocery store, an hour plus to deliver some goods or pick up something at the hardware store. The price of gas matters to everybody. But it matters more in rural America, and people are getting kicked in the teeth by this. And
I didn't hear whether the people with whom, by the way, you were also up a tree, literally, or some such scary kind of thing, but that's your business, not mine. Are there Trump voters with whom you've spoken who are having doubts about his party come November because of this?
So there was a couple of Trump voters. The Democratic candidate had a fundraiser last night in Marshall. There were some Trump voters there giving him a look. They didn't say they were going to vote for him, but they were giving him a look. One of the guys I was with on the farm yesterday, the farm's a really interesting partnership, proof that you can actually get along in polarized America. One guy, it's his land's been in his family for 200 years. He leans Democrat. Another guy's actually a heart surgeon in Florida, but he does some fruit farming and other farming. He bought a piece of the land. He's a Republican-leaning independent who voted for Trump last time, but they get along fabulously, and they run a business. The Republican gentleman, the doctor, said that he thought the war with Iran was inevitable, that Israel was going to start a war and the United States was going to get drawn into it. But he did say, without a doubt, it's driving up costs in the short term. So he was more supportive. The Democratic voters we met with, Democratic-leaning voters, they just don't get it. They don't think there's a rationale for it. And they say, and this is them saying this, so, take it with a little bit of skepticism, that if you live here, you have a lot of friends who are Trump voters. It's just the nature of the beast. And these communities have come together in a remarkable way to rebuild, regardless of who you voted for, to save their livelihoods in their communities. And they say a lot of their friends, the Trump voters, are like, this is not America first. So we'll see. The Democrats are poised to have a good midterm election year. The question is, can they have a great year? To have a great year, they have to win in some places that are really difficult, like red areas, like here in North Carolina, like in Tennessee, like in Iowa, to get those extra House seats or to pick up a Senate seat or two that might put the Senate in play. And at the moment, Jim and Marjorie, I'll tell you that grocery prices, rural America, remember, transportation costs. So your groceries are a little higher here than they might be in Brookline. Gas prices up now, too. You saw me up in a tree. That woman, Corey Hampton, runs an adventure outdoor adventure company. You can zip line, you can whitewater raft. Guess what? She's dependent on families who live 2, 3, 4 hours away, filling up the tank.
Yeah.
And putting the kids in the car and coming to visit. She lost 40% of her business last year, the year after Helene. People they didn't think they should come here. They thought the communities were rebuilding. They shouldn't come. These people are desperate it's a tourism-based economy. Where I am now is right along the Appalachian Trail. Hikers come here, and they stay in the hotels, and they go to the restaurants, and they take available the services. The whole thing is tourism-based. People didn't come last year, and the local businesses say they were down 40%, 50% or more. They're counting on them coming back this summer. It's an issue of survival for these small businesses, and costs are already high for a lot of families, and now they're worried that the price of gas or the price of flying might keep people away.
Talking to John King, he's in North Carolina.
You know, one last thing. They have been pretty successful in their rebuilding efforts. Are things back at least somewhere close to where they were before the disaster?
It is heartwarming. I sit in my car because you can hear construction equipment if I'm outside. Otherwise, I would walk around the town and show you to you. It is remarkable, the progress just from when we were here a few months ago, almost a year ago, to now. Significant progress, but you still see the scars. You still see a lot of plywood. In Marshall, the courthouse is still closed. Some of the churches still have plywood on their windows. But I will tell you this, one of the reasons the Democrats think they have a chance here is that they say that federal money has been slow to come. Now, they said that during the late parts of the Biden administration, but now they're saying it about now that Trump has had a year plus in office. They say that, they're doing this because of nonprofits and volunteers and just people in the community, again, showing up regardless of party and helping each other out. That doesn't mean there's not any federal money, but they don't think it has come in a cohesive way. And they think that dissatisfaction in the community is one of the reasons, mostly affordability, but also the idea that, let's do something different. Let's send somebody different to Washington. The Republican congressman here is going to have to answer for that. Again, he won with 58% of the vote in 2024. So it's a steep hill for Democrats, but they think because of the combination of those things, they do have a chance. And Look, I cover politics, so I'm always saying, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? Did you vote for Trump? Did you vote for Harris? It is heartwarming for me. The gift of my job is I get to learn and visit these amazing places. And to come to a place where people say, to hell with politics right now, we're trying to rebuild our community, that's pretty refreshing.
One of the reasons you like going to these places is because you like and respect people. You were, in our opinion, sort of the champion of decency, John, in the media. And on that note, as I always do at times like this, the other night, I thought of you when Robert Mueller died. And I thought of you again when I was watching CNN last night, and I heard J.D. Vance, he's the Vice President of the United States, for those who don't recall, last September, saying the First Amendment does not protect those who allegedly celebrated the death of somebody else. That would be Charlie Kirk. Here's Vance.
We have a First Amendment in this country. The First Amendment protects a lot of very ugly speech. But if you celebrate Charlie Kirk's death, you should not be protected from being fired for being a disgusting person. For being a disgusting person. Well, my comment, at a disgusting person, said that he was happy that Bob Mueller was dead. That would be the President of the United States. What was your reaction when you saw that post from Trump there, John King?
The first thing is, you think of the lessons your mom and dad taught you. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Yeah. It's a sort of basic common sense, basic decency. I met Bob Mueller years ago when I was working for the AP in Boston. Remember, Bob Mueller was a U.S. attorney, passed through Boston a little bit, way back in the day. And Bill Weld was the U.S. attorney then, but Bob Mueller would come through in those days and have some business from time to time. We're not here to debate, the special counsel investigation and Russia, as Trump would say. This was a man who could have made a whole lot of money in private law practice, who served his country for decades, served Democrats, served Republicans, was at the FBI after 9/11, happened to live very close to me. I used to bump into him every now and then in Washington, D.C. He would go out with his wife for dinner at a local restaurant. Just a decent human being and a public servant, and it's just classless. I'm sorry. It's just classless. I don't know what else to say. But if you play the Vance, you make an interesting point when you play the Vance comments, because, again, I talk about this many times on Tuesdays. One of the challenges for the country is answering the question, who are we and who do we want to be in terms of how we treat our neighbors and our fellow citizens and people with whom we disagree. Maybe even most importantly, how do we treat them? But that's the, do as I say, not as I do, I guess is the best way to put that.
Talking to John King.
Yeah, I want to mention your colleague Anderson Cooper at the end of his show last night on CNN played what Bush had said. It was absolutely lovely.
About Mahler.
Yes, and what Obama had said, and it was equally lovely. And then to contrast that with Trump was kind of like a shock to the system. So what's going to happen with TSA? Are they going to get, there's going to be some resolution here as we see lines up to 4 hours long in the airports around the country?
The last I checked in with our people, there are some more conversations, and there's a bit more of optimism attached to those conversations. But again, as I've said, every time it comes to Washington and spending money and these polarized debates, I'll believe it when I see it. But there does seem to be some effort, and perhaps with the new Homeland Security Secretary, former Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, now confirmed as Secretary of Homeland Security, they've sent Tom Homan, the president's immigration advisor, up to Capitol Hill to try to say, part of this is TSA obviously is the lines at the airport. This shutdown is because of ICE behavior, and the Democrats objecting to some of the ICE behavior in the country. So there are conversations about whether it's body cams, whether it's how you deploy them, other ways to do this. So there are conversations, which tells you there's possible progress. But I haven't seen anything in our CNN reporting that says there's a deal on the table or close to.
You notice ICE at the airports. The ones I've seen, they're not wearing masks. So it's interesting they can go to the airports without masks.
That is interesting, isn't it?
But they can't go out. That's one of the contentions. The Democrats want ICE to stop wearing masks on the street. I mean, if you're going to get doxxed, you could get doxxed easily if somebody's seeing you at the airport, right?
I would assume so.
And there are some people, again, let's see what happens, right? Let's judge the ICE at the airports by what happens. But there are some people alarmed about that as well, because you've had people like Steve Bannon saying that it's a test run for the elections. To have ICE out, checking people's IDs or just the presence that might turn some people away. I hope it's not that. I hope it's an honest effort to help the TSA, deal with the workload. But again, because of the environment we live in, because you have people like Steve Bannon who have a lot of friends in the Trump White House saying things like that, it raises a lot of questions.
Well, I was thinking the ICE would be at the polls at the airport. I've also been reading that some people think that it's not going to be a matter of being at the polls. It's going to be in Democratic cities where they're worried about the election, so that people in neighborhoods that fear ICE just won't come out to go vote. And then we're going to have the cutback possibly on the length of time you can get a mail-in ballot or whatever. But anyway.
So, John, many of us, we've never told you this before, look at you as a fashion icon. And in that spirit, do you think Kristi Noem's hair and makeup was worth $4,000 in those cowgirl ads she did out in the mountains of wherever the hell she was?
I'll just say, when I first switched to television and I had to put powder on my face, I have a sign in my office that says today was a total waste of makeup that I keep in my office. And so, I still need therapy for having to wear powder and makeup on occasion, so I'm probably not qualified to answer that question.
Okay, so I'll ask you another question. The woman is, she's still head of Homeland Security till, I think, the 31st, till she goes to a job that Trump created for a soft landing, some special envoy to something. Spent a ton of money on herself to look pretty, $200 million on these ads that she said that Trump approved. We don't know if he's lying when he said he didn't know anything about them. A ton of money went to a firm that had just been created that was run by the husband of a former staff person of hers. I mean, sort of corruption, misuse of taxpayer dollars. I'll ask the most obvious question. No consequences for this at all unless there's a Democratic Congress in January. Is that fair?
If you mean oversight of people asking those questions, it certainly looks that way. It certainly looks that way. I would say that in 2018, in the midterm elections, in 2020, when Joe Biden won the presidency, the competence, the ability of Trump and his team to do their jobs was a big issue that swung the electorate back the other way. And so I do think that this will be something that will be a major issue in the campaign. In terms of the government doing its job, the other co-equal branch of government doing its job and doing oversight, you do see a bit of this. But again, Tom Massey, a rogue Republican, as Trump would say, had to do it on the Epstein files. You do see enough Republicans stepping up to sort of make them do some of it when it comes to the Epstein files, but I see zero evidence they're ready to do that when it comes to here. Again, watch as the year plays out. I don't think we're going to see the Republicans have more courage in standing up to Trump until after the midterm elections, till they understand has he been weakened and how much has he been weakened in the midterm elections. But you raise a very fair point that is supposed to be Congress's job.
We look forward to your reporting from North Carolina. John, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
The blue shirt is really stunning, I think.
Very
Don't you
stunning.
think?
It looks
absolutely
excellent
is.
blue.
Brings out his blue eyes.
Beautiful with his
Thank
eyes,
you, John.
his hair, the whole thing is
Take care, guys. Thank you.
We've been speaking with CNN's Chief National Correspondent, John King, the man behind the great reporting project All Over the Map. He is in North Carolina right now. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Thanks for tuning in. You can hear the fabulous 413 on NEPM starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon. We're going to keep going here in Boston. Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett is next from Boston Medical Center. This is BPR and GBH and NEPM. We'll be right back.
Join GBH at our Brighton studios on March 30th with New York Times bestselling author Marie Benedict. Learn more about the characters and history from her book Daughter of Egypt when you get your ticket at gbh.org/events.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Heights Crossing, an assisted living and memory support community offering residents experiences aimed at promoting independence, inspiring curiosity, and encouraging connection with others. More at heightscrossing.com. And Boston Ballet, presenting The Dream, a program pairing Frederick Ashton's Shakespeare-inspired ballet and a dynamic world premiere by emerging choreographer Michael Stromae. On stage now through March 29th. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Hello.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A couple of quick programming announcements. We're going to be joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, 11 o'clock tomorrow, right here at the library. And special live music from the great Salt Lake Incubator. They incubate these new bands. Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys is going to stop by to talk to us. He's performing Saturday at the No Kings Rally down on Boston Common. This Saturday, he's going to tell us about that. And on Friday, the governor will be with us. Maura Healey, 11 o'clock, also at the Boston Public Library. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Margie. We're joined now at the library desk by Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at BU Medical School, and Communications Fellow at Primary Care Collaborative, whatever that is. Hello, Dr. Gergen Barnett.
Wonderful
How are you?
Seeing
Nice
you
to see
both
you.
and seeing you all here.
You wrote a great piece for the Globe about the danger on our plate, and I was stunned when I read that 60% of the American adult diet is ultra-processed foods, and 70% of kids' diet. So what are ultra-processed foods, and why are they so dangerous?
Yeah, so I brought it into the context of Dean Kessler, David Kessler, who, as many of your listeners may be familiar with that name, he was head of FDA for a number of years and was the one to regulate tobacco. He was also the dean of my medical school. I was there, and really taught us, some of the pieces of evidence-based medicine. And the connection now is that he's really working to regulate ultra-processed foods. So your question around what is ultra-processed foods, interestingly, the definitions are all over the place. We know it when we see it, right? So it's food that's on a shelf that has emulsifiers, extra additives in order to give it a long shelf life, make it taste delicious. You can't just eat one, that kind of thing. And we know that we have had a long history in our country of having more and more chemicals added to food and very few chemicals regulated. So the FDA has only regulated or observed 15 additives in our food since 2010 and have only taken out one of those chemicals, so the partially hydrogenated oil. So I think people probably remember, right, when that was finally taken out, and it was such a big deal. But actually, most other countries have taken out so many chemicals and allow very few. And part of what David Kessler is working on is saying, as a citizen's petition, the FDA actually needs to do its job. So I know we'll talk a lot about the FDA here, but in terms of thinking about what is actually making Americans sick, we know that ultra-processed food, there was a meta-analysis of 10 million people showing that ultra-processed food increases all-cause mortality, including heart disease, colon cancer, which I know we've talked about on the show before, in terms of increased rates of colon cancer. There is a high connection with ultra-processed foods and colon cancer, diabetes, obesity, you name it. So I am also arguing that the FDA needs to regulate chemicals that go into our food. It seems very nonpartisan kind of issue in terms of when you're looking at what's actually making us sick. And yet we haven't gotten that far yet with the FDA. And so the question is, what can we do as a healthcare system in the meantime?
What is the answer to that? Because, Kennedy obviously talks a good game here.
He does.
But he talks a good game about a number of things. This
Correct.
is HHS Kennedy. And then doesn't do anything to make it enforceable or there be a consequence for bad behavior in terms of the industry. Is there any reason to think that they will rein in bad behavior at the FDA?
In this case, there is there's a feeling of, dare I say, some hope that they are actually strange bedfellows in this way, and that Kennedy and Kessler and others may be moving forward. That being said, we know that leadership of the FDA has recently overturned, and we know that Prasad, who was recently one of the chiefs at the FDA, was really the one to say to the FDA, you all have to be regulating more things. Many of us may not have agreed what he was trying to regulate, maybe, in this case, for instance, mRNA for vaccines for flu shots, et cetera. But so getting more, teeth into the FDA, I think, is one thing. And then the other thing, and I use it as an example, where at our hospital at Boston Medical Center, we have 2 farms that we grow. We have 10,000 pounds of produce that we did just in 1 year for our patients.
So neat. This is on the roof.
Isn't that the coolest?
Yeah, is it the roof?
So it's 2 huge farms, and it's not just like greenhouses. These are true working farms. So I really invite people to come take a tour. We have hives, beehives, and the honey is called BMC, which is really cute.
Can you buy it there?
You can buy it.
Oh,
so
wow.
you can get one of our CSAs. So there's a lot that organizations can do. But I think to your question, Jim, that fundamentally the biggest impact will be when the FDA starts to regulate even 5 more of the chemicals.
But it seems to me, in light of the fact that as an outsider that regulation is unlikely, something that would seem to me to be a compromise, we've talked to Corby Kummer about this quite a bit, some labeling more than having a name. I know that the advice that's given, if it doesn't sound like a real food kind of thing, like hydrogenated or whatever, then it's probably ultra-processed. If they even had a rating scheme on the thing that consumers and did ads for them so you could know that X is at the horrible end of ultra-processed, because Corby's told us, I don't know if you agree, there's ultra-processed and there's ultra-processed, meaning some is really harmful, some you shouldn't do, but you can live with doing it. Yeah. So isn't the rating system at least
I think that's a great idea.
Okay,
a stoplight report.
You know what? It surprised me. Potato chips, which is one of my favorite ultra-processed foods. If you look at the ingredients of most potato chips, they're not very many.
So why don't you make them at home? Make them yourself. Get one of those.
Chips?
What are those slicers called? What's it called?
Yeah,
a mandolin?
I'm not going to bother doing that. But anyway, they don't.
But also, not all potato chips are created equally.
That's right.
Like a Pringles is not the same as a
Lay's potato
Cape
chips,
Cod, whatever,
or Cape Cod potato chips. But Lay's potato chips, if I'm not mistaken, don't have that many bad things in them. And
I mean, the big thing is obviously, if we're thinking about future generations, is what are we doing for our children?
Yeah, they're not very
What
good
are we
for
feeding them in school? It ties to everything we've talked to in the past. But the 70% is really dramatic.
Yeah, 70% is a little bit high. Potato chips do not make up 70% of my diet, but I do like a nice bag of legs, Lay's
every once in a while.
From time to time, yeah. So I always look for something good that the president might be doing, and I was shocked to get 2/3 of the way through the story by Ashish Jha, who's been on the show many
He'll be with
times.
us on the 31st again, by the way, at the library.
He writes for the Globe Opinion, but he's at the Belfer Center at Harvard Kennedy School. He's a big deal. In the story about doctors being paid to keep patients healthy, so what should they be doing, and what has Trump got to do with it?
Well, it's interesting that you should tie that to a happy story about Trump, because I'm not sure I would have put those two in the same sentence. But I do think, so what Ashish Jha and his colleague Michael Tsai wrote about, they wrote an opinion piece, and it is, talking about what we know as value-based care. So this has been around for a decade. None of this is new. So the idea is that rather than paying doctors or healthcare systems for every procedure they do, every blood test they do, every minute they spend with a patient, the idea is that you actually pay physicians or institutions based on how well they take care of a patient, right? So the idea is that you have a panel of patients and that you get scored based on how your diabetes, how many of your patients are uncontrolled diabetics or hypertensive, et cetera. What Jha is pointing out, and his colleague Tsai, is that, we have not seen the cost return on these programs, unfortunately. We do know that Medicare shared savings has some positive outcomes in terms of health outcomes, people getting more preventive care, getting more screenings, things like that. In terms of bending the cost curve, we haven't seen it. But what he points out is that there are those, what we call sort of like ACOs or value-based care contracts, which are driven by physicians, where they have a lot more autonomy, they have a lot more access to the data, where those are actually doing better cost savings. And honestly, none of that is a surprise to me as a physician. The fact is many people in healthcare are in these value-based care contracts, and they have no say over how these things are run. So generally you get, and actually I wrote a piece with my colleague Laura Terry, who's the head of value-based care at Boston Medical Center, talking about the enormous number of metrics we need to hit in value-based care contracts, including, we calculated for our providers, it's 60 metrics that we have to hit in order to get paid in our value-based care contract. And some of those metrics are coming from a single payer. So in other words, there's no concordance, there's no coordination, there's no kind of working together in the same direction. And a lot of these metrics don't matter to patients. They come, they have something they want to get taken care of, and then we're having to ask them about their teeth or, whether they want fluoride or, and they're talking about chest pain. So it's really not concordant, right?
Can I ask a question about this in the middle of your thought here?
Yeah.
I was going to save this for Dr. Jha, but then we're doing it today with you. It seems to me that this value-based thing that I've always been persuaded makes the most sense. The one problem that hopefully you'll disabuse me of believing is it encourages practices not to take the sickest patients because they're less likely to have a positive, rewardable outcome. Is that wrong?
It is absolutely right. In terms of if you look at if systems are not actually then thinking about what there's a certain way to calculate how sick people are and what the burden of disease is. And so if providers and systems are able to use those calculations for their panel, then it is not correct. In other words, somebody who is homeless and has COPD and uncontrolled diabetes would give the practice more money to take care of them. Okay. So that's not entirely right, but if you were just to kind of do broad brushstrokes, it could be perceived that way. The bigger thing, and one of the big concerns, is just the aligning of incentives. So if you have primary care trying to keep somebody at low cost and healthy, but you have all the specialists who have no desire to be part of that process, then you're going to have a real discordance. So part of this piece was talking about how do you align incentives so that, you have primary care and specialists working together. And frankly, longer runways are needed to decide whether or not we're bending cost curves. Like, you're not going to be able to tell whether somebody is saving money by keeping them healthy tomorrow, right? It's really about kind of the heart attack. I know I was listening to Michael Curry on my way over, right? And he was talking about GLP-1s and pre-diabetics and how we, don't think in the long term in medicine, and that's absolutely true, right? So we're thinking really about what are we saving the hospital today or tomorrow, and not what are we saving our healthcare system and our country in 10 and 20 years.
That's even truer in government. Can I answer a question you asked before?
That's what they said about the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Best potato chip, according to Wirecutter, and it appears not only best, but also the healthiest, only has potatoes, oil, and salt. No other chemicals. You can only buy it, unfortunately, at one place. You know what the one place is? Amazon.
Oh, what's the name of it?
What kind of potato chips?
Amazon Fresh Classic Potato Chips. They say it's by far the tastiest.
Okay.
And unfortunately,
did Jamie just send that to you?
What? No, I just looked it up.
Oh, you looked it up.
We have this computer thing where you type stuff in, and then it tells you what you want to know.
You're so
often.
fast.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Well, since you got free time, by the way, why don't you look up Lay's potato chips, please? And
I
tell
will.
Me about,
I'll check it out for you.
those,
Sure.
Okay. The Trump thing, supposedly in the story, since I did mention it, was that the administration has come up with new programs that go up to 10 years, pointing out that programs with longer track records do better to show.
Yeah.
So that is something.
We're looking at that.
It's not much,
within
but it's something.
Medicare.
So
right.
I heard about these things a while back about somebody that was getting married, and they had these IV infusions the day after the bachelorette party, so they could
recover.
all sober up and recover for the actual wedding. But apparently, these IV vitamin infusions places are all over the place. What's the story?
I think you're very excited about this, Marjorie. We're going to have to take a field trip, I said, down
that's right.
Down this beautiful street here that we're on. So the med spa industry. So I'm going to answer that question, and then I want to just kind of back up a little bit to think about some context for all of this, right? So there are IV drip bars. It's a $15 billion industry. Oh. Marjorie just got potato chips.
Deep River potato chips. What are the ingredients?
These are bad. These are bad.
Okay. What are they? Oh, you're not supposed to say that.
Whoops. Deep River?
And these are all of these IVs. So you at the bachelorette party, they're going probably for their getting to feel like their hangover was better.
Yes.
You have people going for longevity. You have people going for recovery. And these are largely unregulated. Massachusetts, luckily, it is. You do have to be a nurse to give the IV.
Oh, that's good.
So that's good. So there's some sort of regulation in terms of who's actually putting the IV in you. We don't know how much training they've had or whatever, but I'm thrilled that is true. But it is, again, I think it goes to this bigger question of why are people seeking out such expensive wellness cures? And it goes to the stories about peptides and all these people injecting peptides.
What are peptides?
So peptides, we have amino acids. If they're in a long chain together, that's a protein. Peptides are smaller chains of amino acids. And if you think about GLP-1, that's a peptide, right? And so what happens is it actually works like a messenger. So when you inject it, it's supposed to message another part of what's already going on in your body and either produce more, muscle relaxation, or in the case of GLP-1, a glucagon hormone to make you full and feel like the noise around food is dissipated. So as in the case of GLP-1s, we know that there's a lot of positive evidence that
the P is peptide.
The P is. Yeah, P is for peptide.
I know.
But there's others like Joe Rogan, and I know
he's a peptide.
He's really into peptides, and he has talked to Health of Human, the HHS Secretary Kennedy. They've had a conversation where Kennedy's really talked about actually wanting to get more peptides regulated. Speaking of, sort of where the FDA could go with this.
Why are we talking about peptides? What happened to IV drips?
So this is all connected.
They're in the IV drip.
So the point is that we're seeing this huge wellness craze, right? And frankly, and it's partly because of what we're talking about in medicine. There's so much frustration with medicine right now. We're so reactive versus proactive. We don't necessarily, we're not great, Western medicine is not great at addressing people who just don't feel well, but nothing shows up in the labs as a reason that they don't feel well, right? And people also, so people are taking it in their own hands, and they're saying, well, I want to feel better. I want to go out. There's obviously a lot of influencers who are doing these things.
Well, you're an influencer. Should they do it?
No, they shouldn't do it.
Why?
Well, because it's not regulated. We don't know what's going into your arm. We don't know what the long-term consequences are. We don't know what is safe. And frankly, there's I think it's connected this whole idea of like wanting to live longer, wanting to feel better. And it goes back to this whole thing of like, upstream care. What do we know actually makes people better? Food that doesn't have chemicals in it, right? And why are people spending hundreds of dollars putting
So you're going to cancel your appointment
arm?
for this afternoon or no?
I would like to point out that Lay's potato chips, which you refused to look up for me, contain potatoes, vegetable oil, and salt.
Okay.
So they're not an ultra processed.
So not every ultra processed food is treated the same.
That's
Marcy
correct.
would like to know if she can get an IV drip of a potato chip. Is that doable?
Crushed up potato chips.
Exactly, right
just
in
for
there.
you.
Mainline
Just for
it.
you.
I'm just
with some peptides
But I mean,
sprinkled
I am
on
really
top.
suspicious. You go pay whatever you
Here
pay,
we go.
$100, $150. Have somebody shoots them.
It's
put an
like
IV
$200
in your
to
arm.
$300.
$200 to $300
No
per
insurance,
pop
by
for
the way.
all these
No.
vitamins.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I get the rehydration theory. That's the post-hangover or the deal.
Yeah.
But even
But
that,
it's better
why don't
to
you
take
drink a
it by
lot of
mouth.
water?
Better to take it by mouth.
So there's
unless you actually have an issue with your sodium or potassium or whatever. But we need to know those things and actually get it up to a level that it's supposed to go, right? Because it's dangerous when your potassium goes too high. It's dangerous when your sodium goes too high. You could urinate out all the vitamin C you want if it's too high, but then what a waste of money.
Unfortunately, we have to end this because Marjorie stopped paying attention 8 minutes ago when she started Googling Lay's potato chips. I mean, be honest. You have no idea what we're talking about.
You were supposed to Google
She's just
Lay's
waiting to
potato
open it.
chips.
She is.
She can't
Trust
wait.
me, she is.
Totally.
Yeah.
You should take the
Doctor,
first crunch online.
It's great to see you as always.
Always.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. We've been speaking with Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care, Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, where they have that great farm thing going on the roof over there, right? It's on the
10,000
roof.
pounds a year.
10,000 pounds a year.
Incredible.
We should go on a field trip, Jim.
We should.
She is also an associate professor at BU's Medical School and Communications Fellow at the Primary Care Collaborative. Thank you very much, Dr. KGB. Coming up after this quick break, Bobbi Gibb was the first woman to complete the Boston Marathon 60 years ago. 60 years ago. She is still running, and she joins us next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR 89.7 GBH Live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, you can throw that lousy Nobel in the garbage. When it comes to crowning achievements, you just can't beat a Guinness World Record. Or, well, you can, but then you get the record, which is even better. Today, we meet the man who pogo-sticked his way to immortality. Can I beat him at his own game, or will I crack a tooth on the studio desk? Tune in to find out. That's today at 1 on the Curiosity Desk.
Support for our programs comes from you and Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com. And Coco Badakian & Sons, offering antique rugs since 1938. A range of hand-knotted, modern, and antique oriental rugs are available to view in their showroom at 808 Main Street, Winchester, or online at cocorug.com.
Welcome back to BPR on 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, live from the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. 11 o'clock tomorrow, the Attorney General. 11 o'clock Friday, the Governor. We're joined now live at the library by somebody who changed the world. Her name is Bobbi Gibb. the first woman to ever complete the Boston Marathon in 1966, 60 years ago. This Friday, she'll celebrate another milestone, the ribbon cutting on a statue. We'll show you the photograph in a minute. She created, we'll tell you of whom it is, near the start of the marathon route in Hopkinton. Bobbi Gibb, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for being here.
It's wonderful to see you. This is amazing.
Well, I just love your story so much. It's such a great tale. So tell us, 1966, no women in the marathon, but you decide you're going to run it anyway. How'd that happen?
How did that happen? You got to go way back.
Yeah.
I always loved to run, even as a toddler. I mean, my dad would take me to the park. I grew up here in Watertown when I was little, and I just love the feeling of running. It was like the world is whirling by. It's incredible. You move your legs and the world moves by. You're a little kid. Most little kids love to run. I mean, you take your kid to the beach, they run around, and so I just never stopped. So I loved that feeling of running, that sense of freedom, that sense of being alive, like this energy of the universe pouring through you, and the blue sky and the green grass. And so I just ran, and everybody else stopped running. There was no running movement. I was born in the middle of World War II. And so I grew up during the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, and in those days, opportunities for women were practically non-existent.
Right.
And my mother was a beautiful, intelligent woman, totally frustrated. She had to spend her life cleaning floors and scrubbing dishes, and she wanted to be a journalist and travel the world. She was brilliant. And all her friends in the neighborhood, same thing. Taking tranquilizers, drinking a little wine in the afternoon to kind of dull the pain of not being able to develop their own gifts, to be who they are in this world. And I said, Mom, if this is what being a woman is going to be, I'm going to take my dogs and my horses and I'm going to go to the wilds of Canada and live. I can't live like this. And this is me growing up. And she said, well, you're going to have to learn to put up with it because it's the only way you can survive. And then I was keeping running with the neighborhood dogs. I was up in the woods. I lived in Winchester.
You ran across the country. I mean, don't leave that out.
Yes. And then I'm running. And she said, you're never going to find a husband running in the woods with the neighborhood dogs. She was really, she thought she was doing this for my own good. I had to learn to conform. I wasn't going to learn to conform. And so the first time I saw the Boston Marathon was in 1964. And my dad and I went out to see it at Wellesley. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever seen a bunch of human beings running like that. And I didn't know anything about the AAU or the BAA or track or field or anything. I just loved to run. And so something sat inside of me. It was like falling in love. I fell in love with this race. It was like there's something deep about the human spirit here. These two-legged creatures running across the plains of Central Africa. I'm going, this is amazing. I want to be part of this.
Speaking of wanting to be part of it, in 1966, you applied.
I applied.
To be what was the response you got?
I got a response from Will Cloney and said women are not physiologically able to run 26.2 miles. We can't take the medical liability. The longest race for a woman is a mile and a half.
Mile and a half.
Sorry, it's a men's division race. Well, I had trained by going across the whole country. I went across the whole country every day. I ran in a different spot. And at night, I camped out. I slept out, and I'd knock on a door somewhere in the Midwest and say, can I camp in your backfield? And they'd say, sure, sure. And one time in the middle of Kansas, I knocked on the door. This woman came she said, come in, you must have dinner with us. And she was taking care of her paralyzed son there in the middle of Kansas, trying to run this farm. And I went in, and this house was so full of love. And this is what I found all across the country. And I wanted to say this is also, more importantly than my 60th, way more important, the 250th anniversary of this country. And this is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The first time in the history of the world that a country is ever founded on the principle of human rights. So we have all this freedom, this wonderful freedom, but we also have this sense of loving your neighbor and helping other people and working together to make something really great, which is why I love America so much. And granted, America and some Americans make mistakes, and granted, it's been a long time. We've been doing this and refining this. But my goodness, I just, I'm just thrilled. I ran across the country. It's a beautiful country, beautiful people.
Let's get back to you.
Yeah,
You're too kind to
get back to and you and your mother, because when you came back and you were ready to go sneak and run the Boston Marathon anyway, your father was horrified. Your mother was pretty horrified.
Yes.
But you defied them both.
No, I talked to my mother. I said, Mom, don't you see? You're not happy. This is going to help to set women free. And tears came to her eyes, and she said, okay, get the keys. Get the keys, she says. And we drove out along the marathon route, and I said, Mom, it's so wonderful to have you on my side for a change. And she said, it's something I should have done a long time ago. And I love my mother, And she said, I thought I was doing it. I thought I was trying to break your spirit for your own good. But she said, I always admired your freedom and your independence, and she helped me she drove me to Hopkinton.
Okay, so Cloney says no. You say yes.
I said, at last I see a way that I can change things. If I can prove this false belief about women wrong, then it's going to call into question all the other false beliefs that have been used literally for centuries to keep women confined, to keep them oppressed, to keep them down, to keep them from being themselves, from having freedom in this country.
Okay, so you hide in the bushes. 3 hours and 11 minutes later,
I'm sorry.
No. 3 hours and 11 minutes later,
which is
you've proven everything
fast.
you wanted to prove. The men during the race,
they were wonderful.
Very supportive, right?
They were wonderful. The men runners were great. I said, I'm afraid they'll throw me out. I thought the police were going to arrest me or something. I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. And they said, we won't let them throw you out. It's a free road. And so we ran together all the way to Boston.
And then you ran for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yes,
yeah, and it was, when was it that women were allowed to run? 1972, I believe. So you paved the way for that.
Yeah.
6 years later.
I came back in 70. I came back in 67, and there were 2 of us women running, and I finished about an hour ahead of the other woman, who was Catherine Switzer. She'd gotten an illegal number in the men's division race. But then the next year I came back and ran again. There were 5 women, and now that time before 1972, when finally the AAU approved of women's marathons, that's now called the Women's Pioneer Division marathon.
So
Speaking of Pioneer, wait a second.
Tell us about the statue.
Melissa
the
Lutke.
statue.
No. Melissa Lutke is another kind of pioneer, a reporter in men's locker rooms.
Yes.
I love Bobbi, a pioneer we should never forget. With her and you and statues, we won't. I get it with her feeling of wanting to be part of sports that didn't want us. Thanks, Bobbi. Brian from Paxton. I had the pleasure of meeting Bobbi in person when I was running the 2016 Boston Marathon. She is a beautiful soul. So beautiful soul.
Thank you.
You got commissioned a bunch of years ago to do a statue.
Yes.
Who did you want to do the statue
I
of?
wanted to do Joan Benoit.
What'd she say to you?
She's a dear friend of mine.
What'd
She
she
said,
say?
no way, it should be of you. You were the first.
So what'd you do?
So I embarrassingly did a statue of myself, and which was very strange because I'm going, oh yeah, there's my hand, there's my
Can we
feet.
put the picture up, by the way? You'll get to see.
Yeah.
That is Bobbi with this incredibly beautiful.
Your brother's shorts you had on there?
Yeah, I love sculpturing. That's what I do now. I sculpt large, small, medium, sculptures, and I sell them all over the world. It's wonderful.
Where's this going to be? If people want to
This is
see
gonna
this,
be-
Bobbi, when and where is this going to be?
Hopkinton, the 27th.
Near the starting line.
Yeah, near the
How's it
start.
make you feel after all this?
A bit shy. I'm basically sort of a shy person, but I love meeting these wonderful people. The people that I've met in this sport and in the media too. is amazing.
But you're one of those wonder. You really did change the world, Bobbi.
Bobbi,
you did.
I did. It was front page headlines, and it went out around the world.
I know that.
My parents had friends in where was it? Malaysia, that said, "Oh, congratulations on your daughter." I was in the local paper in Malaysia. So, wow, this is great.
So Mom must have changed her mind then.
She really, and my dad too. He thought I was nuts, and then, and he put his arm around me when the reporters were there, and I say, those Gibb legs, Dad.
So do you still run?
Yes, I still run.
Yeah, good for you. So no bad knees or anything like that after all these years of running?
60 years later. How can I be 60th anniversary? I'm only 39.
Exactly.
That's right.
You're looking pretty good, my friend. So one more time, can the public go to this unveiling?
Yeah, it's totally public.
27th.
Yeah.
What time?
What time is it? I don't know.
We're going to check it out before the end of the show.
I have no
Let
idea.
you know. Jamie, if we can find location and time for this unveiling.
I'll be there all day. So.
Bobbi, we are thrilled to know you. We are incredibly proud of what you've done in this honor that you so richly deserve.
Well,
keep running. And
you guys are wonderful.
Well, you're pretty wonderful yourself.
I mean,
the great Bobbi Gibb.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bobbi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have been speaking with artist, sculptor, runner Bobbi Gibb, the first woman to complete the Boston Marathon 60 years ago this year, and she is still running. We're going to get all the details on the ribbon cutting on her sculpture, but we do know it will take place this Friday in Hopkinton before the end of the show. We'll find out exactly what time and where. Okay, coming up after this quick break, we're going to open the lines to get your thoughts on silence, which is rich kind of coming from us. Silence when you're walking, silence when you're running, like Bobbi Gibb, silence in your own home. Apparently it's a craze now, Jim, on TikTok. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR 89.7 live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Farmers have tended to support President Trump politically, but his tariffs, immigration policies, and war in Iran are hurting their bottom lines.
They're choking us. We are getting choked out here. This is not going to end well.
Is it painful enough to move this loyal voting bloc away from Trump? That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Mass Historical Society, presenting the exhibition 1776, Declaring Independence, with revolutionary artifacts, letters, and more. Open March 6th through December 19th. More at masshist.org. And Landvest Christie's International Real Estate, an independent brokerage representing residential and investment properties for buyers and sellers across New England and the Adirondacks since 1968. More at landvest.com.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We have the information. The dedication of Bobbi's statue is Friday the 27th at the corner of Hayden Rose Street and Main Street, obviously in Hopkinton, at 11 a.m. Corner of Hayden Rose Street and Main Street, 27th, this Friday, 11 a.m. in Hopkinton for the great Bobbi Gibb. That doom-scrolling routine you have whenever you get home from work, it's killing you, according to medical science or something about medical science. There's so much content out there. It's easy to feel like you need to keep up with it all. The news, new movies, music, other entertainment, endless. And by the end of your doom scroll, you're a nervous, dysregulated mass of humanity struggling to fall asleep. Well, Gen Z, at least some of it, has apparently stumbled on a concept long preached by Zen Buddhist monks. It's called the silent walk.
My sweet boyfriend challenged me to walk without distractions. No AirPods, no podcast, no music, just me, myself, and I. And at first I was like, no, my anxiety could never, which is probably what you're thinking. And look, the first 2 minutes are mayhem. Your mind is racing, you're gonna have anxiety. Something happens after 2 minutes where your brain just gets into this flow state. And suddenly, you can hear yourself.
Well, she's the one that started it. Existing research shows just 2 minutes of silence can be more relaxing than listening to relaxing music. That's right. Even the Calm app, it costs $80 a year, by the way, to listen to Matthew McConaughey drawl you to sleep, might not be helping. So we're opening the lines to get your thoughts on silence. The good, the bad, the ugly. You able to sit with yourself, or walk. No music, no social media, no external input other than the natural sounds of Earth. 877-301-8970. Silence, walking, and you. Now, you are a pro-silence kind of person. Is that correct?
I must admit, though, I've gotten into a bad habit of making phone calls when I'm walking. I like to walk, catching up to people on the phone when I'm walking, which I really shouldn't do.
But don't you do that meditating thing?
Oh, I do. I've been a big meditator for years. Yeah, that's silence.
That's silence.
That's silence for a half hour every morning. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. Although it's hard sometimes when you get home or you're in the kitchen cooking or you're doing to either put on the radio or put on the TV or put on some music. It's hard to be silent, I think, in our world now. It somehow seems like you have to be connected. When you see people walking now, they've got earbuds in their ears all the time.
Well, they're suggesting it's a lot healthier and you live a better and longer life
if you don't do it. You see people on the track that are jogging or walking, so they can run a long way like Bobbi Gibb. When we used to run, when you and I were young, and I've never walked with anything. I mean, you ran long ways with no sound in your ears.
When I was running, I was mostly talking to myself. So it was... Now, in all fairness, about 9 years ago, I was silent for about a minute while I was awake, and that was it.
Didn't you tell me you listened to the radio all night long?
Do. Music, and I do. For the most part, I do.
Don't you find that a little odd?
I'm not awake most of the time, but I fall asleep to it and I wake up to it, yeah.
Yeah, and so the idea of turning it off would make you nervous or anxious?
Silence gives me hives.
It gives you hives.
I get in the car, I immediately turn on the radio or Spotify or some such thing. I get home. I mean, it's what it is.
Did you hear that little remark about people agreeing from our staff?
What?
Silence gives you hives?
Well, it does. I mean, what do you want me to say? I'm being honest. I am not comfortable in silence. You are totally comfortable. You love silence.
Gives them hives too, Chip.
Okay, fine. I mean, it is what it is. I'm doing the best I can.
Or maybe it's you that gives them hives
Maybe
in general.
it is. 877-301-8970. So silent walking is one element of it. You can talk about that. But silence in general, do you ever do it? And what does it do for you? Or can you just simply not? This woman, and I threw it out, is it Maddie Mayo? What's the name of the woman who?
Maddie Mayo.
Right, who started this trend. She acknowledges the first few minutes, she calls it mental mayhem. When you're first silent on a walk and then ultimately you settle in. And it says, here's what it says in the story we read. You can forge a deeper reconnection to yourself. I don't want to forge a deeper reconnection to myself. So that's fine. If you do, I have no interest in doing that. And as a result, I'm not. But apparently, it's a big thing. And apparently, it's really healthy for you. So I should like it. We'll find out if you do. By the way, when you walk, and I often call you and you're in the middle of a walk, do you listen to something while you're walking?
I've gotten in some bad habits. Of
like what?
Podcasts.
Yeah.
Audiobooks.
You're a big podcast person.
Yeah. So, you know what? It's much better to do it quietly, silently. It used to be, it was also helpful for your head. When I used to be a reporter, a magazine writer for Writer's Block, you think. If it's
silent?
Yes, and if you have a podcast in or you're on the phone, or you're not thinking. So it's much better to do it.
Here's Maddie, our colleague.
Yeah.
I love silence. It's why I get to the studio 30 minutes before Jim, so I can enjoy some peace. She is generally here 30 minutes before me, it appears. It's
there
for good reason. Okay, 877-301-8970.
Amina's with you, says, silence gives me hives, too. I actually feel the same. Always need something on, including BPR reruns at night. Well, thank you, Amina. We're glad you do that.
By the way, I'm not always listening. I should be clear about this. It isn't that I'm always... if it's music, it's one thing, because it's always in your head. But if it's a spoken word, like a podcast or a radio show or whatever it is, it's just there. It's like not quite white noise, but what are you laughing about?
Rebecca from Florida. My conservative father was way ahead of the curve. Every time he caught me listening to BPR as a teen, he would race in and shut off that damn Jim the Red Browdy. That's a good one.
Gabby in Providence, you're first on BPR. Thanks for calling. Hi.
Oh, hi. So I'm 25. I live in Providence with my girlfriend.
Yep.
And we wanted to have our winter goal was to be in silence more. And we called it Gabby and Emma's Winter of Foregone Days and Memories Past.
Oh.
That's great.
Oh.
That's great. How's it going?
And we deleted all of our streaming services. And when we're home, our cell phones have to be in a drawer. And we also are not watching YouTube, except for you guys, honestly.
Wow.
And it's honestly, like, my mental health has never been better. I'm more creative than ever. Sorry, I'm really nervous.
How about your partner? Same deal?
Same deal. She actually just bought a truck, and she's outside working on it right now. So we both just have, like, more projects than ever.
That's fabulous.
Well, you know,
That's
I'm
a
so
great
glad you
start
mentioned the two
to
things,
this.
mental health being better and creativity, because I think you do think when you're in silence, think about things you want to do or think about situations in your life or problems in your life, which you can't do if you've got something in your ear all the time.
Can I ask Gabby a question before she goes away? How long did it take you? It's Emily, right? Your partner?
Emma.
Emma, I'm sorry. How long did it take you and Emma to feel the positive benefits of silence? When did it kick in?
We thought it was going to be so hard, especially deleting streaming services, but it literally took a week to adjust. Wow. And like it's like our bodies just like wanted to relax in our home.
That's a fabulous call.
Like, no stimulation.
I want to be like you and Emma. Gabby, thank you. I really would like to be able to do that. Gabby, thanks for a great call. We appreciate it. Wow. Do you feel do you feel the benefits? Well, meditation is an extreme. I don't mean extreme in a negative way. It's an extreme form. But when it is quiet, are you living a better life?
I think I'm living a better life, Jim.
No, I'm serious. I'm not being.
You wouldn't know it. I suppose.
Well, maybe I would. Okay, I'm not getting
by
into
my
them.
perpetual state of confusion.
My
but I think
coworkers
it's helpful.
just wrote, "We'd like you to be like Emma too, Jim." Well, there appears to be a consensus.
Okay, Missy in Needham. Thank you for calling, Missy.
Hi, Missy.
Hi, I talked to you guys yesterday about the fuzzy Crocs.
Oh, yes, indeed. Hello again.
So I walk every day in the woods. I have a dog. I think I'm addicted to it now. I have to be in the woods. If I don't get my hour in the woods, no earbuds, just walking, listening to the birds and everything, I don't feel right. So,
Missy.
I think there's something. I think maybe I'm one of those people that's sensitive to the pheromones that the trees give off.
That's pretty intense.
How about that forest bathing that lots of people talk about?
Yes.
That's kind of what you're describing, I think, right?
Yes, I think so. But it also does what the other girls were talking about, the other lady was talking about, just gives your mind a chance to unwind and do nothing and just get rid of all that stimulation and stress.
Another healthy person. Missy, that was great, too. Thanks so much for your call.
Here's a texter. I'm in the car. I'm a hunter, and there's no better feeling than being out in nature and just sitting quietly, taking in all the surroundings.
Waiting to kill a bird. Is that what?
Well, I don't know what they're waiting to kill, but you are out there. Well, lots of people now are overpopulated by deers, I think.
Do you ever walk in the forest and just...
I've not done any forest bathing, but
what is forest bathing?
It's going out in the woods and walking around the forest. Getting the endorphins
naked
off
or
the
what?
No. People aren't naked, but I mean, you walk around the Arboretum. You can go to the Arboretum.
Yeah.
You can go to Jamaica Pond. You can go to places that have a lot of woods feeling and tree cover, and it's really...
You know what I do when I go to the Arboretum? This is an exception. I walk over to people and say, "Hi, I'm Jim Browdy. Do you want to talk? Do you want to..." Is that inappropriate?
Do you know who I am?
Exactly. And they all say no. And I said, "Do you want to talk anyway?" Apparently most of them don't.
Susan...
I'm not kidding, by the way. I can't even handle... I'm sure this is a psychological deficit issue. I cannot handle like a minute of silence.
Okay, so what do you think that's about, Jim?
Well, being an only child, Jim... That explains everything. Is that not what you're going to say?
No, I think it has, self-reflection.
Here's Jamie. I tried to take a walk in the forest, but I kept getting calls and texts from Jim, so I tried to jump in the river instead.
There you go.
You should put it on forest mode, and then people can't get...
Susan from Hingham, thank you for calling.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, this is the first time I've gotten through.
We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you've got this topic. I live next to a town park that is about 600 acres, and I want to get quiet all the other voices that are human. And I have coyotes coy wolves that sit under my window and howl, even in winter. I go out in the park and I want to hear the birds. the only time the birds are not dominant out there is because it's winter, and but I do my best to shut out all the human stuff. I'm around humans all the time, but the wonderful thing about nature is there are all these...
Whoops. Oh, did we lose you?
I think we lost her.
Oh, Susan. Oh, you're back. Susan, the wonderful thing about nature is what? We lost you when you said the wonderful thing about nature. What's the end of the sentence?
Oh, the wonderful thing about nature is that right now it's announcing spring in every way. Ever since early February, there were 1 or 2 birds singing their songs, and now there's like 12.
Incredible.
But I do my walks to discover what is the health of the ecosystems near me, because I know all the sounds in nature in the eastern forest. And when I hear certain birds, I'm like, great, they're back, or great, they're here. But when I don't hear certain things and they should be there, I go online to find out what happened to them.
That is incredible.
Very nice.
That was an incredible call, too, Susan. Thank you for a great first call. That was terrific. Thank you.
Here's a text, Jim, from someone that you might want to get a hold of. Oh, shoot. I just did something wrong to my screen.
This is not going to be good. Thank goodness you lost it.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, too bad.
And listen to my thoughts? That guy's crazy. I don't want to hear from him. Is that you texting?
That's so funny. That's no, really. See me laughing right here?
Yeah, I hear you laughing.
Really
Sam from Stoughton, thank you for calling.
Hello, Sam from Stoughton.
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Quite well, thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I find for me, unfortunately, I'm staring in front of a screen the whole day, and so I think having any time in the forest, being in nature, I think it's just so important, and it's just, I actually kind of like the peace and quiet sometimes.
What does it do for you? Sam, what does it do for you?
I just let my mind wander, and whatever it goes to, I just let it wander and do whatever it wants to do. Although I know the one thing I don't do anymore is I used to read books under the trees, but one time a bird pooped on me, so that was the end of that.
That's a good reason to stop. That was another great call. And people really seem into this. Hi, Sam. Thank you.
Lane from Jamaica Plain. I just came home from a weekend-long silent Buddhist meditation retreat. 100 women sitting, walking, eating in total silence. The walking is a meditation practice just like sitting. I've done this retreat for many years. When I'm home in Boston, I walk with my dog several hours a day and never listen to anything.
What were those Was it Buddhist monks who were in that protest where they what were they protesting again? I can't remember. What was it? But they walked in silence, did they not?
They walked all across the country, didn't they?
I don't know if it was a long distance in silence kind of thing. I wish I could do it, sort of.
We have a lot of silent people
here. I know,
here.
Apparently we do.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about how it helps their mental health. Silence is golden.
I've heard that, by the way.
Silence is golden. Well, I thought many people have texted that. I thought I'd sneak that into the studio.
I think it's very good.
Are we out of time, aren't we?
We are out of time.
Oh, we're out of time, which is terrible because I was really getting into this whole thing.
Can I say something before? We're going to something tonight, Marjorie and I. That, feel very good about. The Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame at the Wang, it's part of the Bach thing down on Tremont Street, is honoring some incredible musicians from being inducted in the Hall of Fame, from the Neil Youngs, Jackson Browne. There tonight and performing Judy Collins, our buddy, Tom Rush, Tom Paxton. There are going to be a lot of great presenters like Oates from Hole & Oates.
I know. I'm very excited.
One of the surviving member of Peter, Paul, and Mary. A whole bunch of great people, and it's a great event. It's sold out, unfortunately, so I'm not... but it's a wonderful thing, and I just want to mention recognition for someone I've admired my whole life, and I know you're quite a fan,
Rush.
Too.
Yeah.
The great Tom Rush will perform. He's going to sing with
music.
Judy Collins tonight, too,
I know.
by the
I'm
way.
very, very
It's really
excited.
great. So congratulations to everybody.
Okay. Thank you all for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thanks to everybody that came down to the Boston Public Library. Keep up with us 24/7 way of our podcast, although if you want to skip the podcast and stay in silence, Jim, after that conversation, I suppose that's fine, too. Check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're back here at the library with the Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell. She's here from 11 to noon taking our questions and yours, and a special live music Wednesday with R&B artists Claire Ernst and Danny Offline. They're working with the Salt Link Incubator. They are new bands just coming up. You're going to hear them when
before they go rise into the stratosphere. Plus, Ken Casey, the Dropkick Murphys, he's going to drop by to talk about his band's performing this weekend at the No Kings Rally Saturday down on Boston Common from 1 to 4.
And we should say we're getting a lot of texts, people saying, is he Zooming or coming? He will physically be here, talk to us about No Kings and their participation.
I want to thank our crew who would appreciate silence. Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Ronan Keane. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jenny Bologna, who appreciates some silence too. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Juan Jose Cadena, our host of the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned right after us. Edgar B. Hurd III and the Curiosity Desk start immediately after we are done. And then the Culture Show with Jaron Bowen starts at 2 o'clock today. He's going to speak with filmmaker Ken Burns ahead of his latest opus, a 3-part, 3-hour PBS documentary titled Henry David Thoreau. I know Jared says Thoreau, but I just can't bring myself to switch. Anyway, I am Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks so much for showing up today.
So much,
Jim, you did a nice job.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, somebody says, instead of just giving up, Jim, why don't you try silence for 2 minutes? You're not too old to change.
That's really nice. I'll pass, but thank you for the offer. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening.
See
Have
you
a great
tomorrow.
day.
Bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future. How did we get here's how-tos and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Direct Federal Credit Union, a Needham-based financial institution providing loans, saving solutions, and financial wellness resources for members across every stage of life. Learn more by visiting direct.com. Direct Federal, member NCUA. And Mass General Brigham. In heart surgery, expertise matters. Mass General Brigham Heart and Vascular Institute performs thousands of surgeries each year and is committed to research and innovation. massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, in 1967, in the midst of the Cold War and the space race, nations of the world banded together to sign something called the Outer Space Treaty, to find consensus on things like satellite etiquette and can you own the moon. 60 years later, there still has not been an update to that treaty, and one Harvard researcher says that's a huge problem.
Even in a world with nuclear weapons and climate change, I think that this is one of the most underappreciated, near existential level risks to the way that our civilization functions.
Plus, New England's own James Roumeliotis holds the world record for most consecutive pogo hops at an astounding 115,170. How did he pull it off? Did he use the bathroom? That's right, we're asking the big questions on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Former Senator Markwayne Mullin is set to become the newest member of President Trump's cabinet. The Republican is due to be sworn in by Trump later this hour as Secretary of Homeland Security. NPR's Elena Moore reports Mullin is taking charge of a department that's been partially shut down for more than a month.
It's been a busy few weeks for Mullin, who was tapped to replace Kristi Noem as Secretary of DHS at the beginning of March. He sped through the confirmation process, but now Mullin faces a fresh set of challenges. Congress is scheduled to go on recess at the end of the week, but party leaders remain at odds over how to end the DHS shutdown. Trump is also pressuring lawmakers to prioritize passing the Save America Act, which would require proof of citizenship to vote. So if lawmakers go on recess without a deal, Mullin may be taking over a department where nearly half its workers aren't getting paid. Elena Moore, NPR News.
A small group gathers in solidarity with asylum seekers outside the U.S. Supreme Court, where justices have heard arguments over the president's power to limit asylum processing. The Trump administration is seeking to revive a policy called metering that allows federal immigration agents to turn away asylum seekers at the U.S.-Mexico border when the crossing's deemed overburdened. The policy is separate from Trump's sweeping ban on asylum at the border that's also being legally challenged. While President Trump says the U.S. is in talks with Iran to end the war, Iran came under more airstrikes today as Tehran fired missiles and drones at Tel Aviv, Israel, and Gulf nations. Lebanon says it is expelling the Iranian ambassador in Beirut. Lebanon is only the second Arab country to take such action during the U.S. and Israeli-led war in Iran. War has killed more than 1,000 people in Lebanon and left more than 1 million displaced, according to Lebanese health officials. NPR's Lauren Freire reports from the Lebanese capital.
Lebanon's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says it's withdrawn the Iranian ambassador's accreditation and demands he leave no later than this Sunday. Israel's foreign minister said he welcomes the move. Iranian-backed Hezbollah militants are a force in Lebanese politics, but relations between Beirut and Tehran have deteriorated. The last Israel-Hezbollah war in 2024 left thousands dead in the country with billions of dollars in damages. Now, some Lebanese blame Hezbollah for dragging them into another war, this time in Iran. At the onset, Hezbollah fired rockets into Israel in support of Iran, sparking Israel's retaliation. Israel's defense minister is threatening now to destroy more homes in southern Lebanon in a stepped-up effort to oust Hezbollah once and for all. Lauren Freire, NPR News, Beirut.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 55 points at 46,260. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The cost of a New England lobster roll is going up and up and up, and seafood experts are saying prices could exceed the $50 mark this summer. GBH's Marilyn Scherer has more.
It's a simple matter of supply and demand. Everyone loves a lobster roll, but seafood retailers say harvests have been limited so far this year. Joby Norton of Mulaney's Fish Market in Scituate says migration protections for the North Atlantic right whale limits harvesting through April. And that's on top of a colder winter, making it harder for fishermen to get out on the water.
Most of the fishermen don't fish a lot during the winter months because of weather, due to weather, and their traps with loose traps and stuff like that with storms.
But that doesn't mean the industry is hurting. The state's Division of Marine Fisheries says lobster fishermen pulled in nearly $118 million last year, the best year to date. Marilyn Scherer, GBH News.
Today, by the way, is National Cheesesteak Day. The chair of the Worcester Human Rights Commission has announced he's stepping down effective immediately. Mass Live reports Guillermo Creamer Jr. said in a meeting yesterday that the meeting would be his last, and he's choosing not to seek reappointment. His term was slated to end next month. He says the reasons for his departure are personal. He does not want to go into further detail. In sports, the Bruins host the Maple Leafs at the Garden tonight. The Fleet are on the ice at the Tsongas Arena hosting Vancouver, and the Red Sox wrap up preseason today with a game against the Twins. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
You're listening to The Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Why don't you join us there? All right, the Artemis 2 mission, which will return humans to the moon for the first time in more than half a century, has been a little delayed, but it is still set to take off soon. Now, that ambition to return to the moon and eventually send humans to Mars requires mankind to solve all kinds of technical and engineering problems, but it also raises the stakes on a host of unresolved questions, old and new, about law and rules and who's allowed to do what, both in near-Earth orbit and in outer space. We recently talked about this with Ely Sandler, a research fellow at the Kennedy School's Belfer Center at Harvard University, who says the time to truly settle those questions is long overdue. Now, Sandler points out that we aren't starting from scratch. The effort to create rules in space goes back to 1967.
There is basically one big treaty. It's what people call the Magna Carta of space, and it's called the Outer Space Treaty. And so this was signed at the height of the Cold War, and it was basically us, the Americans, and the Soviets coming together to change space from being this kind of lawless expanse into a place that is governed.
But, he says, that was then, and this is now, and the results of that 1967 treaty have been mixed.
In some ways, the Outer Space Treaty is working how it was supposed to, which was it was meant to be the first step in making a whole bunch of law and governance that would regulate how we act in space. And so by design, the Outer Space Treaty was very parsimonious. There wasn't a lot to it. It has these broad principles. For example, it says you have to give due regard to others' spacecraft.
Meaning what?
Well, exactly. And so the reason I say it's not working very well is because they said, look, it's 1967, we're going to have our first treaty, but we didn't really pass any subsequent treaties. We didn't build a body of what you could call common law or regulation that actually defined all the terms in the treaty. So the treaty puts in place some really great principles. You have to give due regard to other spacecraft. You cannot have national appropriation of celestial bodies. What these things mean, though, never got defined. And because unlike, let's say, in the United States, where Congress passes a law, and then either a regulator will say what the law means, or a judge will say that what the law means in case law, we don't have that in the international system. And so every country, us, the Russians, the Chinese, can say they're in accordance with the Outer Space Treaty. I'm doing everything I have to. Because we don't know what any of these terms mean, actually it's not binding. It doesn't motivate states really to do things they otherwise wouldn't.
So you mentioned the year 1967. I mean, if I just stop and think about that for a second, that's before anybody put anybody on the moon. Mm-hmm. That's before a whole bunch of stuff that is in outer space right now was in outer space. I mean, that is a completely different era when we look at it. Now, I wonder about something like the Artemis Accords. Obviously, anybody who's following space at all understands that the U.S. is going back to the moon. There's this huge Artemis program. As part of that, the U.S. has said, you know, we've got this guide to the 21st century civil space exploration rulebook, the Artemis Accords. Mm-hmm. Is that not an update of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty?
Great question. So I want to maybe pull back and say, what are the issues that matter in space the most now that in part are trying to be solved by the Artemis Accords? So you've got a whole bunch of really pressing problems in low Earth orbit. This is more or less stopping satellites colliding into each other and into space junk. And so the core issues here are what people call space traffic management, which basically means avoiding a collision between your spacecraft, or managing orbital debris. So if you have little bits of broken spacecraft, ejecta from spaceships, we need to make sure that comes back down into Earth. That's the set of problems we're dealing with in low Earth orbit. And there's another set of problems, which is actually in some ways the motivation of the Artemis Accords, which is to say, we're going back to the moon. That's going to create a whole load of other issues. A couple examples would be, there are actually very limited pathways for how you can circumnavigate the moon. If I want to get from point A to point B on the moon, from my landing zone to where the water ice is on the South Pole, there's limited routes you can take. We want to avoid collisions between spacecraft. We want to have rules of the road. We want to make sure if I have a base, no one else can land near it because that would throw up ejecta. That's what the Artemis Accords call safety zones. So in some ways, yes, the Artemis Accords is a response to the fact that the Outer Space Treaty had all these legal gaps that weren't filled. And now that we have 15,000 satellites in space, over 1 million small objects that can cause a lot of damage, we need governance for low Earth orbit. And because we're going back to the moon, we need to solve those problems I mentioned. What the Outer Space Treaty originally was about, and I think this is fascinating, you can read the diplomatic cables from the US back to Secretary Dean Rusk when he was negotiating it, was actually about something called freedom of the skies. So the real reason we wanted the Outer Space Treaty to be signed was not because of orbital debris, it wasn't because of weapons, it was because
we didn't want anyone to tell us we couldn't do what we wanted to do in space.
We needed to spy on the Soviet Union. Yeah. And so we need to be able to look at them and not have space be defined as national territory. We got that, we solved it, but it left all the other issues.
You're listening to The Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Ely Sandler from Harvard about the tricky puzzle of space diplomacy. I want to stay on the Artemis Accords just for one more moment. How big of a deal is it that Russia and China are not signed on to the Artemis Accords? How big of a deal is that?
So the Artemis Accords were orchestrated and signed under President Trump's first administration. So in maybe 20 seconds, let's do what happened between 1967 and the Artemis Accords.
Go.
And that'll get us to why they're a big deal. The Outer Space Treaty is signed, height of Cold War diplomacy. We sign another couple treaties. These are to do with very specific issues, things like returning astronauts and other things. Then in the early 80s, the space law community wanted to pass something called the Moon Agreement. And what the Moon Agreement was supposed to do was clarify that term I used earlier, national appropriation. So when the Outer Space Treaty was signed, it bans national appropriation of space. We in America, we understood that to mean I cannot go to the moon and claim the Sea of Tranquility as the 51st state.
Right.
The Russians understood it to mean I cannot go to the moon and use moon rocks without sharing those moon rocks with everyone else. And even at the time, we knew this was a disagreement, but we wanted to get the treaty signed. Fast forward to the Moon Agreement in the 80s, a bunch of countries, actually without space programs, wanted to clarify that national appropriation meant if the US or anyone else goes to the moon, if we extract resources, we have to share it. And the problem is that actually, for lunar bases and Martian bases to work, you have to be able to use what's called in situ resource utilization. You have to use the water ice, you have to use the helium-3, whatever it is. And so the US didn't sign on to the Moon Agreement, and that basically ended the treaty-making era. So no new treaties were passed since then. I think only 9 nations have now signed the Moon Agreement. Since then, there have been a couple attempts at international space law. The Chinese and the Russians almost every year propose a treaty banning weapons in space. We in the US never sign on to it because we don't think it's a good faith agreement. And this takes us all the way to President Trump's first term, when we're going back to the moon and we need to solve some of these issues.
Yeah.
And so the Artemis Accords were an attempt by the US and our allies to say, we need norms. It seems like international lawmaking is not going to work. Can we start to build the rules of the road even without the Chinese and the Russians? And I would say 2 things really quickly about that. One is they do work really well amongst the Artemis nations. And so we are beginning to solve all these thorny questions I mentioned amongst the Artemis nations. The problem is, one, they're voluntary. And then second, the even bigger problem is that Russia and China aren't signatories. And so really what we're talking about here is the US, Russia, and China, when we all go back to the moon, we're all trying to get bases there on the lunar South Pole by 2030. They're not members of the Artemis Accords. And so we haven't solved these thorny issues just with those accords.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Ely Sandler from Harvard about the tricky puzzle of space diplomacy. Let's talk a little bit more about low Earth orbit. I think even people who aren't interested in space are interested in use of their mobile phone, or they like using GPS. These are things I think we all know are made possible by some of these satellites that are in low orbit. Surely there is some rules of the road right now, and who's putting satellites up there and how?
Yeah, this is a great question. So at the moment, the rule of thumb for when a satellite will take evasive action if it thinks it's going to hit something is most satellites will take evasive action if there's a 1 in 100,000 chance of a conjunction. So if your satellite has a 1 in 100,000 chance of hitting something, it will take evasive action.
It's got software inside that's going to do this automatically kind of deal?
Some have automatic, some have ground stations. I am told that on average, a satellite has one of these conjunction warnings, 1 in 100,000, 2 times per year. And so even though we've got a lot of stuff up there, space is really big. And if you talk, for example, to the US DoD, to the Space Force, what they think is the best way to avoid collisions in space is to use force and to say, basically, we need to make sure that if someone attacks one of our satellites or someone does an anti-satellite test, there'll be severe consequences such that you disincentivize that kind of action. My fear is that the most likely cause of conflict in space, and thus the most likely cause of what people call Kessler syndrome, which would be one satellite hits another, that creates orbital debris, that orbital debris creates more orbital debris until, we cannot use satellites anymore. My fear is that the most likely thing to happen is a mistake. And you can't deter your way out of a mistake. And so as we put more and more stuff into space, the likelihood of a conjunction happening is predicted to go up to 30 times a year by 2030, or even 50 times a year. And at that point, you need a way to deorbit those pieces of junk. So maybe a liability regime that penalizes people for not taking down their satellites. You need a way of communicating between countries. We simply do not have a way to tell the Chinese there might be a collision. We tell them and we hope they'll move. You can think of this as like a really complicated version of who goes left and who goes right on the road.
In the world that we're in now, if I, private company, want to put a satellite in space, is there anybody I have to ask? Do I have to register it somewhere? I mean, is it just people acting in good faith?
So yeah, I guess it goes to your first question, and there's 2 levels of it. According to the Outer Space Treaty, you would need to register your satellite. You need to notify the United Nations. No one does that.
Really?
No one does that, but they also say they are in accordance with the treaty because even though you're supposed to register your satellites, it's not clear how when, under what circumstances, what are the penalties for not doing it. And so at the international level, the system is basically not working. You do need to register your satellite, obviously, in the United States if you launch from the US. It's a very, very advanced body of law in coordination with the FAA, the FCC. But space is a global commons. And so even if we don't like it, at some point, as this gets more and more crowded, we're going to need a system to make sure we're not putting satellites in the same place as the Chinese or the Russians. And so this is much more likely to come, I think, at an international level.
So I think the idea of why we need to start unpacking this now when it comes to low Earth orbit makes a lot of sense. When it comes to the moon, which is another thing that you mentioned, just the fact that 3 different countries want to be there by 2030 with permanent or semi-permanent bases, I guess I can kind of see why we should start talking about this now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we should have started talking about this a long time ago. And, just to be clear, I'm not the first person that have realized this. and it's also the case that we do technically have a forum where space issues are discussed internationally. It's a subcommittee of the UN. It's called the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, UNCOPUOS. One of the problems with UNCOPUOS is, one, it's at the United Nations, which has a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. 2, its decisions are necessarily voluntary and non-binding. And so, as an example in some of my work, what I've proposed is a new mechanism, which is called the Conference of the Parties. So a lot of treaties have this mechanism, and basically the way they work is, it's literally a conference of the parties, a conference of the signatories to the treaty, where they get together and they discuss the meaning of the treaty and they discuss its implementation. And so let's take that example I used way earlier of due regard. We know that the Outer Space Treaty says, I believe it's Article 9, you have to give due regard to other spacecraft. That's not defined anywhere, and so it's basically meaningless.
Yeah.
If we had a conference of the parties to the Outer Space Treaty, every year for the last 60 years, we would have had nations discussing, what does due regard mean? Does it mean you have to have a deorbital path? Does it mean you have to have a way of communicating if someone's going to conjunct with you? Does it mean you have to obey which orbital shell you're in? Now, the really unique thing about COPs, Conferences of the Parties, that's different from a UN committee, that's different from Davos, that's different from any other conference, is that what is said at a COP becomes the meaning of the words in the treaty. In international law theory, this is called the thickening of the obligations of states.
The thickening of the obligations.
It's a very nice
such
phrase.
A cool phrase.
Yeah. And what that does is, without amending the treaty, without needing the advice and consent of the United States Senate, without needing to pass new resolutions, what we say is that we know that we're bound by certain principles in the treaty. Let's actually figure out what those are. In my work at the Harvard Kennedy School, we've proposed that basically for the 60th anniversary of the Outer Space Treaty, we should add a conference of the parties. And this would allow Russia and China and America and our allies and our adversaries to come together. We wouldn't have to amend the treaty. We wouldn't have to agree on these big bang, can you have weapons in space? What is a nuclear weapon? No, we wouldn't have to do any of that. We would get together and we would talk about some of the things we all know we need to do. What is due regard? What is a deorbital path? How do satellites communicate?
Just get together and do some thickening.
You get together and you do some thickening.
So what is standing in the way of this happening?
I would love it if the way the world works was that academics wrote papers and then the world changed. That is sort of the beautiful theory.
Says the academic.
The promise of academia. What is standing in the way? So I think that there's practical and then there's philosophical. Practically, like doing anything in the international system is hard. What literally this would require, probably, is amending the Outer Space Treaty once to say we're going to add a conference of the parties. And then from then we start doing this informal thickening rather than amending it to define terms. And you would need to get every signatory, and there's over 100, to agree to it. That's practically.
Yeah.
Now, actually, I think that a lot of states probably would agree. The question is, politically, in whose interest is this? So I personally think that if you look at the United States, we're by far the predominant space power, both militarily, in the government, and then also in the private sector, our space regulation is some of the best in the world. So actually, what the FAA and the FCC and a few other organizations require is really, really high quality deorbit plans, ability to communicate.
It's very robust.
Exactly, yeah. The FCC actually just issued its first fine for a company that didn't have a good deorbit plan recently. So our companies are probably subject to some of the highest regulations in the world. And so actually, from that perspective, it would be better if the Chinese and the Russians also had to follow these norms. And then the much wider issue is, for everyone going to space, this solves this kind of tragedy of the commons, that you go into space and you pollute the global commons, but it's creating real danger as the risk of Kessler syndrome or another thing goes up. So I think it is economically in the interest of our space industry, of our government. The question is, it's probably a challenging time to use careful words for our government engaging on international issues.
What, in your estimation, is the cost of not doing this? As you look even beyond 2030, I mean, even and not too far out, say 2040, 2045, 2050, that's going to come faster than we imagine it's going to come. What happens if we don't find some agreement here?
I've always found the phrase people use, "what keeps you up at night," like kind of funny. As if, people are sitting there really, unable to sleep.
the only time is when I can't sleep.
And then I always find this phrase kind of funny. And I do a lot of work on climate change, which is a pretty big issue.
Yeah.
But I have spent a lot of time thinking about how terrible it would be if there is a satellite slamming into another one, even by accident, not an anti-satellite test, and that creates a cloud of debris. It would change the world immeasurably. Right now, that's not very likely. And but this, in my mind, it's keeping me up, is a thing I think that is actually, even in a world with nuclear weapons and climate change, I think that this is one of the most underappreciated, like near existential level risks.
Wow.
To the way that our civilization functions. I think though the challenge is the same as the opportunity from now to 2030 to 2040. Like, I guarantee you that by 2040, we will probably have solved this.
Yeah.
Because the danger will become so great. And actually, unlike in something like climate change, where the costs of combating climate change are enormous, the costs of solving some of these problems in space are really low. And they're also directly in the economic benefit interests of the actors that have to bear them. So unlike the fossil fuel companies and people working in, let's say, an internal combustion engine auto plant, the actual satellite companies who benefit most directly from solving the issues of space junk and space traffic management, that have to bear the relatively minor costs of saving some fuel for a deorbit, having a protocol for interaction. And so, of all the tragedies of the commons out there, I think that actually space is probably one of the easiest to solve, even though the payoff is so big. So I don't know if it's going to be this conference of the parties idea I proposed. I don't know if it's going to be something else, but I'm pretty optimistic.
Which is good, because you know what? It'd be nice to have a win.
Yeah, it would.
We've been speaking with Ely Sandler, a Belfer Center research fellow at Harvard Kennedy School, whose research involves space diplomacy and governance. Ely, thank you so much for being with us.
See you soon.
Now, we mentioned the Artemis II launch during our talk with Ely Sandler. That launch was initially scheduled for early March. It has been delayed, but we recently spoke with NASA Flight Director Rick Henfling, who gave us this little inside tip.
Keep your eyes on the mission. I think we're really going to be staring down April 1st.
For real? You feel pretty confident on April 1?
Not an April Fool's Day joke.
Does that make you nervous at all that you're doing it on April Fool's Day?
It's better than Friday the 13th, right?
So you heard it here, April 1st, aspirations for Artemis II, no kidding. And you'll hear more from Henfling soon on the show. Some things you'll hear even sooner on the show, why we use the term seed to describe team rankings in NCAA basketball tournaments, and what goes down and up again at Pogo Palooza. You're listening to The Curiosity Desk on GBH. Stay with us.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Ken Burns. For decades, he's been one of America's great storytellers, bringing the country's triumphs, contradictions, and unfinished work to the screen. Now, with a new series on Henry David Thoreau, which he executive produced, Ken Burns joins us to talk about history, democracy, and America at 2:50. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Windhorse Counseling, where they believe healing happens when it feels human. Their counselors support children and adults through a collaborative approach and through the employment of therapy dogs. More about their team at windhorsecounseling.net. And Rogers Fish Company, founded by Roger Berkowitz. Their signature double clam chowder is available for purchase at all Market Basket locations. More at
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Right now, senior producer of the show, Aidan Connolly, is with me. Hey, Aidan.
Hey, Edgar.
So we're shortly going to be talking about Guinness World Records, right?
Yeah, that's right. We got the guy coming on. He pogo-sticked for something like 11 hours.
Yeah, which is insane. Well, anyway, back in 2017, on this very day, one was set. A world record was set.
You don't say.
Indeed.
Edgar.
In fact, it happened in Ireland, which is the home of Guinness.
Yeah.
At a secondary school in Tralee, they organized the world's largest gathering of ghosts. We are talking 560 strong, all of them in single white sheets with eye holes cut out. And this happened in their school gym.
I love that about Guinness, where you can really just sort of set any. I would have never thought to set all the people sending in ghosts. Okay. They did this in March on this particular day. Was there a reason that they did today?
Well, in fact, not necessarily today, but the whole thing was a partnership with a local charity for people living with arthritis. So the idea was it was raising awareness of the ghostly nature of living 24/7 with a chronic and invisible disease.
Oh, this is a thought behind it. That's great. Yeah. So who did they beat for this record?
Well, not just beat, they smashed the previous record. They almost doubled it. That was 263, which was set by Ghostbusters fans in Singapore in 2016 to celebrate the launch of the remake of the classic 1984 film.
Man, incredible, not just that somebody set this record, but that somebody set it and then came back and another group beat it.
Yep.
Okay, so then the Irish still the world record holder.
They are not. In fact, it has since been beaten. And
the third time?
There were a bunch of attempts through the years which failed. And then in 2023, a popular group of YouTubers in Japan decided they wanted the record. They've got a few records, this group of YouTubers in Japan. They got 1,024 ghosts together and set a new world record.
Over 1,000. Okay, so listeners in Salem, I feel like there's a new record maybe in your wheelhouse for a future date. We can call it October 31st, 2026. Just saying we'd love to invite you on the Curiosity Desk, all, however, 2,000 of you. But for the here and now, this day, March 24th, 2026, we have Tziperman Lotan with us. You know her. She writes the GBH Daily Newsletter. Gal, hello.
Hi, Gal.
Hello. Great to be here. So let's start with a different kind of gathering.
Yes.
Massachusetts politics.
Let's go.
State Representative Brad Jones, who's been the Massachusetts House Republican leader since 2002, announced yesterday that he won't be running for re-election. He's been in the State House representing North Reading since 1994.
So his job for the last 24 years has been leading the Republicans in the Massachusetts House. How many people are we talking about?
Yeah, so Democrats have a supermajority in the State House, and about 25 representatives, that's roughly 15%, are Republicans. This is still a position that holds some power. You can delay votes or force a vote. So that other representatives have to go on the record with their stances.
So if he's not running, that means we will be keeping an eye on who will take over that role.
Exactly.
It's going to be somebody new. So what else do you have for us today?
So the state is going to start tracking cases of a tick-borne condition called alpha-gal syndrome.
Alpha-gal syndrome.
Yes.
It's like, I heard about it. It has something to do with red meat allergies, right?
Yes.
You get from a tick?
Exactly. So it comes from what's called Lone Star ticks, which are these brown ticks with one white dot on their bodies. When they bite, they can transmit these molecules called alpha-gal, which are a type of carbohydrate you can find in lots of different animals like cows and pigs, and also in these ticks. Now, this molecule isn't necessarily harmful on its own, but when it enters our bloodstream through tick bites, our immune systems can sometimes identify it as a threat and start developing ways to respond to it. So when you eat red meat or dairy and your body comes across alpha-gal again, you can start getting these allergic reactions.
Wow.
Yeah, so Massachusetts Public Health Commissioner Dr. Robbie Goldstein said that as our climate gets warmer, these Lone Star ticks have been spreading to the north and bringing alpha-gal syndrome with them. Doctors are seeing more cases on the Cape and Islands and now in other parts of Massachusetts too.
Fascinating.
I do have a question. Does it bring you joy when you're writing the newsletter and you're writing over and over again alpha-gal?
Yeah.
Is there like, is there,
do you say to yourself, I'm the alpha-gal?
Yeah, the representation I would like is not through like a tick-borne illness. You know what I mean? Like I would love something a little different, a little more representative.
Okay, well, Gal, what else you got for us?
So I have a question.
Ooh.
When was the last time either one of you visited Faneuil Hall or Quincy Market?
It has been a while.
Yeah. I used to work
the
there,
last time. I think the last time I had friends come in town for the first time and they wanted to go there was probably the last time I went.
Yeah,
I've gone past it.
Yes,
recently,
and that's the answer for a lot of Bostonians, right? Is you'll go maybe if you are hosting people who are visitors in town, and it's been a while for me too. And Boston Mayor Michelle Wu said she'd like to see that change.
For too many locals, Faneuil Hall Marketplace has become nothing more than a place they occasionally take out-of-town visitors. It's not yet a place that captures all of Boston. You can't find fresh apples or cranberries here, chimi or mofongo, banh mi or cachupa.
So Wu said she'd like to see the area become more of a destination for tourists and locals, especially since we have big events like the World Cup, America 250 celebrations, and tall ships coming to the city soon.
All right. Maybe it's worth another visit.
Oh, what was your job there?
Oh,
yeah. Great follow-up question, Go.
I worked, it was a combination diner / candy shop / ice cream shop.
Wow.
I remember people would order sandwiches that I hadn't heard of before, and I was like a solo operation.
Wow. Did you wear like
and
a
I would
paper
go into
hat
the
of some
back.
sort?
I wish I wore a paper hat. I would go into the back and I would look up what people had ordered and how to make them, and then I would just sort of find the ingredients. It lasted about 2 months before I had to step back. And I think that was the last time because I didn't want to go back. Shell-shocked.
Carl, do you have another story for us?
Yes. So this weekend was the start of Nowruz, also known as the Persian New Year, celebrated in Iran and other parts of West and Central Asia. It's usually a time to come together with loved ones and to celebrate the start of spring. And this year, it's been harder for Iranians living in Massachusetts.
Sure.
Saeed Golami told GBH's Esteban Bustillos that he, like a lot of other people, is anxious about what's been happening back in Iran since U.S. and Israeli forces launched attacks almost a month ago.
So it's a bittersweet situation. It's Nowruz, which is New Year of Iran, but also the situation in Iran is nothing to be happy about.
He was speaking at a protest that you can hear in the background. He said that he, like a lot of other people, hopes to see the war end and Iran become a democracy soon.
Well, thank you so much, Gal. That's Gal Tziperman Lotan from the GBH Daily email newsletter. Of course, you can subscribe for free by going to gbh.org/daily.
Gal, Aiden, thank you both.
Thanks,
Thank you
Edgar.
so much.
We are now heading into the second weekend of March Madness, and from the Curiosity Desk team to you, we hope your bracket is not a total bust already. Mine is a mess since I went with my heart over my head, and my alma mater, Villanova, got bounced in the first round. Of course, that 9-seeded Iowa upset of number 1 seed Florida ruined a bunch of brackets as well. And while the madness marches on, one question on our minds: what is up with that term, seeds? What does basketball have to do, if anything, with planting? Well, this is a question we've taken on before, so from the Curiosity Desk archives, here's what we found out. March Madness. When you see a 16 seed beat a 1 seed, you know that is a huge bracket-busting upset, even if you don't know anything about the teams. But have you ever thought about how weird it is that we use that word, seed? It's a farming word. It's always meant those little pips that we plant in the ground. So how on earth did it become synonymous with, of all things, college basketball? You can start by thanking Major Walter Clopton Wingfield. Wingfield was a pioneer of another sport, modern tennis, which emerged in the UK in the late 1800s and quickly took the country club set here in the US by storm. By the 1880s, tennis tournaments were all the rage, and in those early days, the matchups were drawn at random. But as the sport began pulling in more spectators, too often good players met in the early rounds of tournaments, leading to anticlimactic semifinals and finals. That is when an idea took root. Tournament organizers started spreading the best players out in the early rounds, just like seeds, to make it more likely they'd face off later, and the end of the tournament would be more exciting. That became known as seeding. Now, who exactly came up with the term is lost to history, but experts think it was likely first used right here in New England at the 1890 U.S. National Championship in Newport, Rhode Island. From there, the practice of seeding spread to other sports. As for college basketball, the men's NCAA tournament began as an 8-team draw back in 1939, and they began seeding the tournament in the late 1970s. By the way, that seeding system, it worked out pretty okay in its first go-around. The initial NCAA tournament with seeding ended with one of the most memorable matchups in college basketball history. That is the one between two budding stars by the name of Larry Bird and Earvin, not even yet Magic Johnson. And on the topic of March Madness brackets, if college basketball is not quite your thing, or if you can't get enough brackets, right now there is a beef bracket competition to decide the ultimate North Shore roast beef sandwich. Now, we're going to be talking with the guy behind that competition this Friday. In the meantime, yes, we do want to hear from you on all things roast beef. Do you got a favorite spot? Are there some non-starters for you? Like, it's got to be cheese on the bottom or it doesn't count. How about a controversial opinion? Like, maybe it doesn't have to be James River barbecue sauce. Let us know. Shoot us a voicemail at 877-301-8970 or leave us a comment by going to the Curiosity Desk landing page on gbh.org. Stay with us after a quick break. Hop 2. We are meeting a Guinness World Record holding pogo champion. You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. Stay with us.
Coming up tomorrow.
Attorney General, good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell answers your questions.
Paul in Winthrop is texting, wants to ask plans for any legal action against towns not compliant with the rezoning for affordable houses.
We are on top of this. We gave folks to the end of January, and those that do not, we will take action.
Boston Public Radio's Ask the Attorney General, live at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, only on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing coverage plans for individuals, families, employers, and retirees with benefits that help you live in your moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Rockland Trust Bank, helping foster healthy relationships with money by providing education and resources to the community, one neighborhood at a time. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. No, that is not a construction site. Please excuse those boings in the background during this introduction. When most of us think pogo sticks, you might think of third grade PE class, maybe a scraped knee or two. What we don't typically think of is greatness. And we are right now in the presence of greatness. You are hearing greatness. If you are watching our YouTube stream, you are watching greatness. In 2023, James Roumeliotis set a Guinness World Record by bouncing a grand total of 115,170 times over 11 hours on his pogo. He is with us now, as you can hear, and a little later on, we're going to talk with the CEO of X-Pogo, Will Weiner. James, welcome to the show. You can have a seat if you want, or you can, I guess because you're good enough, we could do this entire interview while you are pogoing. But I think that's probably going to be difficult. So take a break. Take a break. So how many... I have so many questions. I'm glad we have a little time here. How many pogo jumps? Is it a pogo jump? I don't even know. Is that the right term? Is it a pogo jump? Is it a pogo?
Jumps, bounces?
Just call them jumps or bounces?
Yeah.
How many bounces would you say you just did there? That was what? Is that
more
even
than one?
So yeah, more than one. Is that even a warm up for you?
That's just bouncing around. That's just regular. Yeah,
that's
not
just
much.
Like a regular bounce. All right, so let's start at the start. What was your first encounter with a pogo?
Oh,
can you remember?
That takes me back to my childhood. My brother and I were at our papa's cottage, and we were bored out of our mind. There was nothing to do.
Yeah.
And
this is before cell phones then, I guess.
Way before.
Yeah. If you had cell phones, you would not have been bored.
We would not have been bored.
All kinds of stuff to do.
But what we had was a pogo stick. And my brother and I didn't know how to use it. I'd try to bounce once. I'd fall. I'd give it to him. Same thing with him. And eventually we got to the point where we could keep our balance pretty well. So I would jump for, 1,000, and we were that bored. We would count 1,000 times, and then it would be his turn, and we'd alternate. And that's where it started.
Yeah,
that's where pogoing started.
And so, in those early days, were you two neck and neck, or was he even maybe a little bit better than you? Did one of you take to it a little bit better than the other?
I will concede. I think he was better than me. He's 2 years older, so with that, a lot of things happened. But I think where it really deviated was back in high school. I revisited pogo sticking. A lot of my high school friends would rollerblade, skateboard, do all sorts of tricks, but I didn't have the balance for it. So I was like, I remember pogo sticks. Let me try getting one of those and try doing some tricks along them.
Amazing. When did so? I mean, is that when you got serious about like? I find the leap somehow somewhere along the way you go from like, oh, this kind of fun thing. Hey, I'm pretty good at this. And then you sort of take this leap into a whole other world that eventually leads to you, like, literally setting a Guinness World Record. Was there, like, a single moment where, I don't know, you sort of realized there was a world of competitive pogoing, or that you realized, oh, there are records for me to achieve here? Like, how did you get, like, serious about it?
Yeah, I think I go back to high school with my friends, because that was around the time, this is the early 2000s, and I started looking at a website called X-Pogo.com.
Okay.
It started as a pogo forum. There were literally dozens of us all around the world, and all trying just different tricks. Not doing much at that time, and that's where I first got into like kind of trying more complicated tricks.
And what's like a complicated pogo trick?
There's different like hand stalls. You put one foot on kind of the edge of the side of the shaft as you try to balance. It's more balance coordination. And then once they introduced more air compressed sticks, where you pump them up with air like a bicycle pump, things got out of control. Way above my pay grade. People are doing backflips and everything. It's crazy.
So that's not your world. You go with the tried and true method.
Yep, I'm a traditionalist in that sense.
Interesting.
And you go endurance.
Is the world split between like traditionalists and people who are embracing new technologies?
No, I don't. Like I said, pogo. If you can believe it, it's such a small community. We really embrace and support each other, regardless.
So, you at some point begin attempting, all kinds of records. What are some of the records that are out there that you set your sights on?
The big ones I go for are endurance.
Okay.
So most consecutive bounces, farthest distance. That's one that I had before, and I'm looking to take back this fall. And my biggest target, the great white whale of it all, is I want to do the Boston Marathon on a pogo stick.
Well, you want to do the Boston... Okay, so you want to run... Essentially, you want to pogo the marathon. Is there any... So what's standing in your way? I mean, do you have to, like... Would you have to, like, talk with the organizers?
That's the big one. Yeah. Just talking with the Boston Athletic Association.
So BAA, if you're listening, we got a guy here who is ready to pogo the entire marathon.
Yep.
And you feel like you're trained up to do that? How do you train? Like, how do you train? Like, do you pogo every day, 7 days a week? Like, how does it work? What's your regimen like?
I'm not ready yet, but I will be. And that's kind of getting into the routine. It's like training for a marathon as it is, where you kind of pace yourself week over week. You increase either the duration or the distance, and you never go the full length. You just build that system and that process. And eventually you go far enough that okay, I'm confident in the system I have, that when it comes time to do it, I can't back down. I won't back down.
So can you just walk me through logistically, how would you plan to pogo the marathon? Like, would you take breaks along the way?
Yeah,
is it like how would it work?
Yeah, so that's one of the few records where you do get a 5-minute break every couple hours.
Okay.
And so these pogo sticks are meant for little kids, the ones that I use. Yeah. So they will bend and break. When I did the last distance record, I went through about 9 of them. So I would probably go
went through 9 sticks.
Started bending. They're meant to go up and down, not
go forward.
And so it would start to bend over time, get harder to use. And what I would simply do is, after 3 to 5 miles, swap out a stick and go from there.
We're talking with James Roumeliotis about setting a Guinness World Record in pogo. Now, you have brought in, I am holding, I just took it off the screen. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, I just moved it away. But this right here, certificate, Guinness World Record, the most consecutive jumps on a pogo stick is 115,170, which is insane, achieved by you during Pogopalooza 2023 in Boston, Massachusetts, USA, September 9th. 2023. Take us into the moment. What was it like?
I just collapsed. I was done. I really wanted to go for a lot further in 12 hours, but when I started, my foot already started hurting. I did a rookie mistake putting new shoes on, only breaking them in a week, and my heel started hurting within the first 30 minutes. But at that point, I realized I got to break this. All these people here, family, friends, support. I needed to go through with it. So. Once I broke the record, that was around the 88,000 mark. That's when it becomes a mental game. Because
so wait, the record, you broke the record at 88,000, but went all the way to 170. So you weren't just trying to break a record.
I wanted to smash it.
You were trying to smash it. That is crazy. So I mean, what do you? do you listen to music? What's going through your mind? Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing for 11 hours?
I am singing karaoke, singing along songs, getting people's attention, just having a grand old time. We did this at the Vietnam Memorial in South Boston. We were raising money for a homeless shelter of veterans. And one of the things I just love to do is I love community, I love people, I love singing. I can't sing. It's terrible. You do not want to hear this. But that's what I basically did for nearly 12 hours.
Well, speaking of music as part of it, I believe we have a little sound. I think this is cell phone footage, and this is the sound from that cell phone footage of you beating the world record in consecutive pogo hops. Crowd's cheering you on. I think we got some Frank Sinatra going. Let's have a listen here.
I had a few, but then again, stupid to mention. I did what I had to do. So it's done without
It's just like I like that you're in rhythm. Like you're like chicka, 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 just like a shaker egg going, but that's just you bouncing up and down. Your feet killing you because you're in brand new sneakers, breaking a world record.
Such a mistake.
Okay, so now a question that was asked a lot in our newsroom was, what do you do if you have to go to the bathroom or eat during this 11 hours?
The bathroom is the most popular question.
Yeah.
I've always had a plan. Thankfully, I haven't had to execute the plan.
Okay.
I think because I'm just drinking so much and working my body through, a lot of it just comes out as sweat naturally. So I haven't had to. But I was ready. I had a hula hoop with a privacy curtain so you could still see the bouncing but not see everything else. But I haven't had to do that.
All right. Now, you mentioned X-Pogo, and we promised we also had another guest here. So I'm going to bring into the conversation the CEO of X-Pogo, Will Weiner. Will, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Thanks for having us.
Tell us about X-Pogo. What's it all about?
Sure. Well, like James mentioned, it really started off as an internet forum on those early 2000s internet days where some pogo nuts from kind of across the country and world realized other people were trying out tricks in a very similar story to James's. It evolved over time, and we've kind of become a governing body of this sport of extreme pogo sticking. So we'll produce something called Pogo-Palooza, which is like the yearly world championships. We produce stunt performances. So the best way to make money right now pogoing is kind of doing stunt shows at basketball halftime, state fairs. We also, we'll work with James. We have a pretty tight relationship with Guinness to help certify Guinness records. Really anything we can do to just let people know pogoing's still a thing, and especially kind of the extreme end of it and the fact that it's growing and taking off and all that.
So you both sort of we've mentioned Pogo-Palooza as if it's sort of like, everybody knows about Pogo-Palooza, but I don't know that everybody does know about Pogo-Palooza. Tell me about Pogo-Palooza. What is it? Where does it happen? What happens at Pogo-Palooza?
Sure. So that's another thing that's evolved a lot. The original Pogo-Palooza was back in 2004. In a church parking lot in Lincoln, Nebraska. Like 6 or 7 guys from the message board all met up, and they're like, wouldn't it be cool if we hung out? And one of them called it Pogo-Palooza, and it was essentially them just messing around in a parking lot. It has since kind of grown into this Pogo World Championships, part competition, part family reunion. Like James mentioned, it's a tiny community. So it's really the one time like all, 40 pogo enthusiasts or whatever come together to make this happen. So as he was mentioning, the sport has really taken off into some crazy directions. So there's something like a high jump competition where this past year broke a world record a little bit over 12 feet, like bouncing up over a bar, landing and continuing to bounce on the other side.
Oh, wow.
There's park-based competitions, kind of like X Games or essentially like a floor routine, but on pogo sticks, going up and over obstacles. So it becomes this really wild competition, but at the same point, not a lot of people know. So it's very DIY. We're based in Pittsburgh, so we essentially do it in a parking lot and bring in some bleachers and make some boxes for people to jump on. And it's kind of this crazy juxtaposition of like literally the best people in the world doing this stuff but it's also like, how did I stumble on this? So it's a lot of fun. It's a wild time.
Now, Will, were you there? Were you there for James's world record setting moment? And if so, what was that like?
Yes, I was. I've been fortunate to be around for a couple of James's records. The last time he did the distance one. But yeah, he had me out there in Boston. Like I mentioned, we have a relationship with Guinness. If you're just like trying to apply for a Guinness record, it can be very difficult. It can take a long time.
Oh, interesting.
They're getting stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So we kind of have a fast track. So I was there. You can see if you're on the YouTube stream, bounced along with him for 1 hour, and that nearly ended me. So it is really.
So you're not an endurance pogoer yourself, Will.
No, I mean, I don't know. I feel like an hour on a pogo stick.
Actually,
for the
that's
general
fair.
population.
I mean,
it's
I
like,
could probably do about 35
give
seconds.
myself a little bit of credit, but
I'm like,
no,
you only
I'm not
did
going to
an
do 11
hour?
hours.
Come on, anybody
but I
can do
will
an
say
hour.
one thing that was really interesting with that is we both, say over that hour, for every one of my bounces, James was maybe doing 3. And even historically, the guy who had the record before him went for those 88,000 close to kind of the 11 hours James did this time, but James got 115. So I think one of the really remarkable things is just like the pace of bounces he's able to maintain for that long. But yeah, it was a beautiful event. The karaoke thing, James put together, his hype up playlist, and it's like,
yes,
why have you been going for 7 hours and you're singing along to, like 2000s pop punk or whatever, and just seeing people come by and stop and ask about it, and just kind of the way he was able to galvanize and inspire, and then breaking the record. At one point, it was a torrential downpour. So, we're making sure
amazing.
Rain isn't messing everything up. And just to see him obliterate that record and kind of that beautiful moment of, he was like, I want to end it. Let's all sing along to My Way. Then I'm going to collapse. And it went down just like that. So it was really a wonderful, beautiful day. And one of the things I feel very fortunate about this job is just getting to see people who are good at things and love what they do extraordinary things. So it was a real treat.
That's super cool. James, you brought some other stuff in with you.
Yep.
What do you got here? Like, quickly, because we're sadly running out of time, and I still have so many questions to ask. But I want to know what you brought along here. There's like more pogos.
Yeah. So this silver one.
If you're watching on the YouTube stream, you can check this out now. He's busting out. Whoop. And then we got crazy. What?
So this one here is what I use for the most jumps, because like I'm a little guy. All my kids weigh more than me. That's not them, that's me. And this is this gives me that 3 bounces a second. So this is a typical one.
So that's like silver. It looks sturdy.
Yeah, it's pretty diesel.
Sturdy.
It's pretty diesel.
And then we got this wooden one that looks like some kind of a sword. What is this?
It looks like a training broadsword. It is literally a pogo stick. I mean, this thing is from the 20s, so this is over 100 years old. One of my friends just was cleaning out his grandma's basement. They came across it and like, I know exactly who would want that.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I luckily got a hold of it.
That is incredible stuff. All right, before I let you both go, I'm gonna ask you a question. I mean, I think you used the phrase, Will. You said pogo nuts. I mean, I love communities of nuts about things. What is it about the pogo community? Like, in what way are you special nutcases in the pogo community as opposed to just regular nutcases who belong to other communities?
Yeah, I think I found kind of within the action sports world, there is a little bit kind of more like creativity and whimsy to the pogo folk, because just like baseline extreme pogo kind of sounds like an oxymoron. And it is just like this really weird, unique sport where at first people are kind of like, what? Why? So I think that just really strengthens the bond of like, there is something that clicks in people's brain of like this kind of joy of pogoing in different directions, right? Like James's endurance, some people like the high air stuff and they're floating in the air. There's guys who've done records for like fastest mile, and it just kind of clicks this form of creativity tied to the athleticism, I feel like, that really draws people in.
James, real quick for you, does that ring true? What do you love about it?
It's like Will said, it's the community. It's an extended family, and people, like, there's no animosity, no jealousy. It's people really helping each other get ahead, bounce ahead, just lift each other up.
Right on. All right, we've been speaking with Guinness World Record holder James Roumeliotis and X-Pogo CEO Will Weiner. James, Will, thank you for hopping into the studio with us today.
Thank you for having us.
And also hopping in is Jared Bowen. Jared, do you think you could pogo 115,000 times? That's what James did.
That is possible.
I don't think I could do 10.
Remember, I had lots of training on the pogo ball. Remember the pogo ball?
Oh, yes.
When we were kids.
Oh, my God.
Pogo ball is what you call it.
Oh, yes. Incredible. Well, more in the here and now, Jared. What do you have on the Culture Show today?
We have a big one. We're starting off the show with Ken Burns today.
Oh, I've heard of him.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about, there's always so much to talk about with him. The latest project on which he's working, he has executive produced a new film on Henry David Thoreau, so we'll talk about that, but we'll also talk about America's 250th, because of course he's just coming off having produced the major and having made the major sprawling American Revolution. Plus, as we recently talked on the Culture Show, his earliest film, Brooklyn Bridge, just was entered into the Library of Congress,
which is amazing,
for the National Film Registry. The Boston Civic Symphony is taking us into America 252 with a Lincoln portrait concert with Amanda Shea as the artist reading Lincoln's words in Symphony No. 5 by Mahler. Great pairing. And then finally, we end the show with MASS. Used to be known as Mass Design. MASS stands for Model of Architecture Serving Society. They are a phenomenal group which works through communities throughout the world to build schools and hospitals and all manner of buildings. Again, the emphasis on working with the community, not to the community.
Well, as usual, sounds like an incredible show, and it's coming at you in just about a minute and a half. As for us, that's it. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. Patty Daniels always puts the bounce in our step. Our engineer today is John the Claw Parker. Special thanks to Andrew Massawa and Bradley Lewis. We'll be right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming live on YouTube. Until then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things art.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Bernadine Sung Megasin at Dream Mega International Realty, dedicated to helping buyers and sellers across Greater Boston, offering market insight and guidance through each step of the process. More at homesbybernadine.com. Examine the decades-long quest by America's conservative political machine to amass power by exploiting racial fault lines and stoking narratives of white victimization. Watch White with Fear tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Ken Burns. Few filmmakers have chronicled American history with more sweep, curiosity, and emotional force. As the nation approaches 250, Burns talks about democracy, truth, and the drive to understand a country through the lives, conflicts, and ideals that shaped it. The conversation also turns to Henry David Thoreau, the restless conscience at the center of a new PBS series Burns executive produced. Then the Boston Civic Symphony takes on America at 250 with two towering works. Copland's Lincoln Portrait, narrated by spoken word artist Amanda Shea, and Mahler's Symphony No. 5. Under the direction of conductor Francisco Noya, the program moves from Lincoln's lasting aspirational reach to Mahler's stormy, searching journey. And can development actually strengthen a community instead of draining it? We explore a way of thinking about architecture that asks buildings to give something back, all by way of MASS, one of the planet's most forward-thinking architecture and design firms. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. You're listening to The Culture Show. Filmmaker Ken Burns has spent decades chronicling the American experiment, its grandeur, its contradictions, and its unfinished work. Now, as the nation approaches its 250th anniversary, he's placing a focus on Henry David Thoreau, a writer who challenged America to think more deeply about conscience, citizenship, and our relationship to the natural world.
Henry David Thoreau wrote about the impact of industrialization on nature and society. He tried to live a simple and intentional existence.
I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately.
Thoreau says you can't even ask the deep questions if you don't stop to figure out what the deep questions are.
Henry David Thoreau is a new 3-part PBS documentary series executive produced by Ken Burns and Don Henley. It's directed by Eric Ewers and Christopher Lauren Ewers and premieres next Monday. Ken Burns joins me to talk about Thoreau, America at 250, and the very significant honor his first film recently received. Ken Burns, welcome back to The Culture Show. Great to see you as always.
It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start to talk about, I know this isn't the full Ken Burns treatment in term for your executive producer here, but this is also a very poignant moment to look at Henry David Thoreau, his own examinations of wealth and who we are in society. Why do you see this as a pretty ripe time?
You know, it's interesting. I've tried over the last dozen plus years to help some of the folks who've been in our shop for a while, like Eric Ewers and his brother Chris, who's a extraordinary cinematographer that we've used for years and years and years, to sort of go off and do that, and I'd be the backstop. And so the thing about Thoreau is that yes, it's contemporary, and all the signs point to how much it's very much like today. I think what that clip you showed tells you is that it's also about this intensely personal story, this sense of who am I, which is the other question after I ask who are we, is who am I? Not myself personally, but I think these deeply intimate things. And Henry David went into the woods to find out who he was. And I think this is something that nature provides, and what he comes out with are timeless. And so the fact that he's rhyming in the present moment so significantly is, of course, wonderful and is helpful to go in it. But what Chris and Eric have made is an extraordinary film, and I'm very proud of even just sort of tangentially being the vermouth in a very dry martini and helping them actualize this.
I remember during the pandemic, of course, a lot of people started thinking about Henry David Thoreau and being in the woods and retreating. We all took stock. And as you were talking, I was just thinking about where you're headquartered in New Hampshire and how that fuels your process to be there and not in a cosmopolitan editing room.
Yeah, I should be, I'm told all the time, in New York or L.A. I've been for 47 years in a tiny rural town in New Hampshire, and I don't even live in town. I live outside of town. I think that nature is a great mirror of who you are, and for some people that's a difficult thing to look at, and so we want to have as many distractions. For me, I live a very public life, but I'm a very introverted person. So the work that I've figured out I'm supposed to be doing over the last 50 years is incredibly labor intensive. So being where I am actually helps the process of focus. It helps the process of scholarship. It helps the patience required to distill. Filmmaking is not additive in my case. It's subtractive. You've got a 12-hour series on the American Revolution, but you've got 500 hours of stuff that you're trying to boil down, and seeing what goes into it. Having nature there, it sounds like woo-woo, but it's not. Having it present is this great, it reminds you of somebody said this in our National Parks film about Denali in Alaska. It says it reminds you of your atomic insignificance. And if you have that in a daily reminder of how small and relatively insignificant we are, there's something incredibly inspiriting about that, and you grow, just as the egotist in our midst is diminished by his or her self-regard. So you can't take the country away from the work that we do, even though it's often incredibly urban, incredibly dynamic, incredibly complicated. All of that is served by being close to it.
Well, let's move to your last major work, The American Revolution. We were just talking as you came in. First of all, you started talking about this last fall when it premiered.
Yeah.
Then we were talking about it recently at the Boston Speaker Series. A couple months later, we're still talking about it because this film has really resonated, and you have, of all things, the numbers to show that.
Yeah, it has legs or stockings legs or whatever it is. It came out in mid-November. Suddenly someone not related to PBS sent me something late one night that said that for the first time ever, it's a Hollywood Reporter or Variety or something, the first time ever PBS had entered the top 10 of streaming programs at the moment. And the metric was 565 million minutes. And I'm going, this is insane metric. We know that 18 million people watched the broadcast. We figured out how to whole body it. It's now over 4 billion minutes. And I thought this would be the last 4 or 5 months would be a chance to go back and fully invest in the projects I've been working on, and also even perhaps have a little time off. It has been near constant, which is really good given the fact that all last summer as the rescission vote and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was unceremoniously assassinated, this incredible organization that's been around for decades and decades and decades since the creation of Public Broadcasting Act in the New Deal, which is, in the Great Society, which is one of the projects we're working on. Our death was, sort of foretold, and people come up to me, are you okay? Is it over? I say, yeah. CPB was 20% of our budget, and now we have this great success, and the rising tide lifts all ships. There's a kind of energy, I think, to what I feel about my own ongoing work and commitment to PBS, and so we just get through it. You can use the analogy to the revolution. If you give up after Bunker Hill, which you lose, you give up after this battle, New York, you give up after Brandywine, you give up after Germantown, you don't have a country. But if you don't give up, you've got something incredibly special.
Well, I am so especially pleased to hear this because we are in this moment where fact and truth and the history we know is so much in question at this point, but here you have a widespread audience which is devouring it.
And they are, and I think that's the thing, the more we've got all this stuff at the edges which is so, if it bleeds, it leads, it is in people's interest for us to be divided. We're always talking about how we're divided. Well, Ken, is this like the Civil War? And you go, no. We were much more divided during the Revolution. We were much more divided in the Civil War. In the area of Reconstruction, also a project I'm working on, really terrible time, obviously in the Depression and World War II and Vietnam. So you kind of just have to take a breath, disenthrall yourself, sort of get rid of the narcissism that comes with, our age is the most important and the most difficult and the most complicated, and therefore we're going to hell in a handbasket and the sky is falling. All the things, all the metaphors and sayings you can throw at it. And just sort of realize that most people really want complicated stories. They don't want simplified things. They don't want you to edit out the truth from the photograph. Oh, that person doesn't exist anymore. That person's fallen out of favor. They want, and we all thrive on the complexity and the nuances of dynamics, not just between people, but within them. That you can have somebody who's complicated, having good and bad aspects. And so people will be drawn to that. I know that the novelist, and we talked about this once, Richard Powers said that the best arguments in the world, and in this binary culture, that's what we do is we argue, the best arguments in the world won't change anybody's point of view. The only thing that can do that is a good story. As if a good story is this vessel in which you contain these complications and that undertow and the dualities that exist within people and not just between them in what we call conflict, which drives a lot of drama, of course. And I like that, and I like the fact that there are all these people out there who are devouring a really complex portrait of us, where we came from, in advance of July 4th, which runs the risk of the 250th coming up this July 4th of the signing of the Declaration. We in Massachusetts have lots of examples of 250 already. That it could just be drowning in fife and drum treacle, and we want we want something more. We want to reinvigorate why we're here. We want to re-understand the complexity and the dynamics of this incredible variety of people who occupied this territory that we call the 13 former colonies.
Well, I loved learning about your process, how deep your own fact-checking is. Of course, I would expect nothing less, but it's even deeper than I realized. In watching the film, I realized you don't hear the phrase "shot heard round the world." We never meet Betsy Ross. Why don't we meet Betsy Ross?
So we don't know who made the first flag. We have other people say some variety of shot heard round the world or something like that. You don't hear what was attributed to the Battle of Bunker Hill, which primarily took place on Breed's Hill. Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. We watched the hanging of Nathan Hale, who was captured shortly after the British took New York. Washington abandoned New York City, and it would be in British hands for years and years and years. And the stronghold, really the headquarters after Boston of the British military presence in the United States. And then somebody burns New York, a lot of it, and the British are furious, and they find a spy, one of Washington's great spies. He'd applied to Congress. Washington applied to Congress to burn it. Congress said, don't burn it. But as Washington said, some smart fellow did. Yeah. And the British were like irate, and they would have hung him anyway. But they hung him with a sign over it that said, Washington, the person they held responsible for the fire. We note, which is the only thing we could find, that a British officer noted that Nathan Hale went to his death with great composure. But we don't have the exact certainty that he said, I regret that I have but one life to give for my country. Now, you can say, oh, this is myth-busting, this is some sort of revisionist stuff. It's not. It's actually trying to, as you suggest, get the facts right. And we are Sarah Botstein, my co-director, and I would stay up late just trying to figure out, we'd find new scholarship, and it maybe the 16 boats that we had, a new scholar thinks maybe not 16, so we find a perhaps and copy it and move it there and can sleep. And even the scholar would not have been bothered if we'd said 16, because it was just, he was questioning it. So we have that kind of dedication, and I think the hundreds of millions of little decisions that were made in the course of this, in the end, it shows. It may not be in people's awareness in the moment. I've just had lots of people tell me they've watched it 2 or 3 times. And that is exciting, that there were layers of meaning or things they didn't catch. And we're not trying to build necessarily obtuse, complex thing where you need a couple times to figure out the whodunit of it. It's just that there are various levels of the storytelling that we want to be reflected, and we're not going to stop and treat people as we never do in public broadcasting, as if they're need hand-holding. We trust the intelligence of our audience, and that's one of the great beauties of spending my entire professional life here.
I'm speaking with Ken Burns, the award-winning filmmaker, who we're talking about the American Revolution now, but of course Henry David Thoreau, a new project of which he is the executive producer, premieres on PBS next Monday. It'll also be streaming. Well, let me go back to that for a moment, because we see how radically the industry has shifted. You obviously illustrated that we lost our funding here at PBS. Corporation of Public Broadcasting is now defunct, assassinated. I like that word.
Yes.
We also see what streaming is doing and how the consolidation in media is happening. Does any of this change your ability to do your work?
Well, it makes the fundraising, which was never easy, more difficult. The thing that I'm worried about, I'll figure this out. I've been doing this for a long time, and the 20, 21, 22% that was the CPB portion of any given budget is a significant amount. We'll find a way to make it up, as will PBS Central. But there are stations that require much more than that, like 50% or 75% in some places. And will be more than just an existential thing. It will really be they can't continue. And to that point, I think there's going to be less ability to find somebody who's up and coming and say, oh, wow, we need to support that project. In the early days, CPB was much bigger portion of my budget when nobody was going to take a flyer on me. I looked like I was 12 years old. I was making a film on the Brooklyn Bridge. And so you're sort of surviving by the willingness of this system to look and say, okay, let's see, how are we going to find out? And so I'm worried about that for the system, and I think that we then, it's the obligation of all of us, PBS in Washington, the individual stations, the people who are established, the shows, the series, to help figure out how to bring people along. I mean, one of the things that I executive produced this is to sort of say, there's a whole pool of people that have worked with me. Eric has worked with me since, I think, the day he got out of college. And, now he's middle-aged, and I'm an old man. And so this is, we've done a couple of projects like this on youth mental illness called Hiding in Plain Sight, where I served as an executive producer on a wonderful film that he and Chris made. And then Chris and he and I made a film on the Mayo Clinic. So there's opportunities, I think, for all of us. We just got to kind of draw the circle and figure out how to help each other.
To say nothing of institutions that will give you the free rein to tell a story in its due time.
Look, I buried the lead. None of the 40 films that I've done, some are an hour length on the Brooklyn Bridge, or some that are 20 hours on jazz, could have been done any other place. I mean, I needed 10 years, almost 10 years, to tell the American Revolution. There's no other place that was going to give us. So the fact that we're adapting to streaming means that we're nimble, but we also have fallen back onto the thing that brought us here, which is the idea that we're not going to let go of any film in this case until it's done, it's fact-checked, that we're confident the story we're telling is accurate. That, in my editing room, as you and I've discussed, there's a lowercase cursive neon sign that says it's complicated. And at one level, it just means that in any given moment, the facts always have to win over the art. You have to just be willing to give it up. The art's going to come in somewhere, how you tell it, what you do, the look of it, the feel of it. But it has to be based entirely on facts. And we live in a world now, as you suggest, where we're sort of post-fact, post-truth. And I don't accept that. And I think public broadcasting doesn't accept that. And most people out there are not going to say the sky is green when it's blue.
Let's end on a really celebratory note, which is, well, that's something to celebrate too. I think we're all holding on to that. Yeah. And I do agree that most people are. We were told people aren't, but I think they're on either side. 1981, you make Brooklyn Bridge, your first major film. It just went into the national. We were just talking about this, and your face just lit up in your experience making the film. And right after that, I was so happy for you when I saw that it went into the National Film Registry, of course, administered by the Library of Congress. What did this mean to you?
It was a huge, wonderful thing. I think part of the problem was that those of us who've worked in television, but we're filmmakers, the film community didn't really say that. And so they didn't see it as making a film. This was just a television show. And it wasn't. It was shot in film, as everything for 10 plus years after that, 20 plus years after that was shot in film, and had theatrical distribution or some such qualifying thing. And so when it went in, it was just so exciting. I love that film. I cut my teeth on it. I learned how to be so many different things. Hampshire College in Amherst prepared me, but this was the real practice. And, how to tie a tie, how to write a budget, how to keep to a budget, how to make a presentation, how to then, of course, shoot and do all those other things that you think are part of the process, but then how to edit it and how to make a tough decision, how to say, too many notes and take something that you love out and put something else that you don't love as much in because it works better. All of that was sort of, I guess, incubated in Brooklyn Bridge, and the time and the experience of editing it and putting it together is still so sort of present in my life and so moving. The people that involved, particularly Amy Steckler, the editor, my wife, and no longer with us. And so it has this all kind of resonance that is really important, and it made me feel very happy.
Well, congratulations. I was doing a little dance for you when I saw that. I was so excited.
The last word of it is from Arthur Miller, and he said, you look at this steel poetry sticking there, and it's a shock. And he could have done another Manhattan Bridge, but he didn't. He really aspired to do something gorgeous. This is John Roebling, the designer. He said, so it makes you think that maybe you too could add something that would last and be beautiful. And that, when he said it, I just said, that's the last word of this film. We put it's the last word of the film, and we've tried not consciously, it's not sitting there like a slogan, but it's inside that this is what we're all here for, is to do something that will last and be beautiful. And what a wonderful thing if you can make your own Brooklyn Bridge. Maybe it's a garden, maybe it's a child, well-loved. It doesn't have to be, the things that we think are the things of distinction for the human race. It can be in these simple gestures to do something that would last and be beautiful. That's been the mantra that's animated me, generously bestowed by Arthur Miller.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us today. And again, congratulations and for leaving us with that notion. Always great to see you.
Great to see you too. Thank you.
Ken Burns is an award-winning filmmaker whose landmark documentaries include the Civil War, baseball, and jazz. A recent project is Henry David Thoreau, a new 3-hour PBS documentary, executive produced by Ken Burns and Don Henley. It's directed by Eric Ewers and Christopher Lauren Ewers and premieres on PBS next Monday. It'll also stream on pbs.org and the PBS app. Well, coming up, as America approaches its 250th anniversary, the Boston Civic Symphony takes on the moment with Copland's Lincoln Portrait and Mahler's Fifth. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Make getting ready for the day the most productive part of your day.
From the GBH Newsroom in Boston, I'm Mark Hurst.
Get the local news you need to know. Traffic and transit updates. And weather with meteorologist Dave Epstein.
A gusty wind in the afternoon, partly cloudy.
When you're getting ready, get ready with us.
Time to round up the week with our incisive politics reporter, Adam Riley.
GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hurst. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News app.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Revision Energy, a renewable energy company building and servicing solar, batteries, and air source heat pumps for local homes and businesses for over 20 years. Revision Energy. Revision your power. More at revisionenergy.com. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing helpful digital tools, world-class providers, and coverage that help you live in the moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
And the Worcester Symphony Orchestra presenting the music of Frank Sinatra, featuring Las Vegas Sinatra tribute artist Chris Jason and the Sinatra Live Big Band, Saturday, March 28th at 7 at Mechanics Hall. Tickets at worcestersymphony.org.
Coming up, you'll hear something on GBH News that just wouldn't be possible without listener support. So, while you're listening, consider pitching in $10 or $20 a month as a GBH sustainer and help make it all happen. Give at gbhnews.org.
At Jordan Hall. Joining me to talk about it all are music director Francisco Noya and spoken word artist Amanda Shea, who will be the narrator for Lincoln Portrait, the performance. Amanda Shea, Francisco Noya, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you both.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Well, Francisco, let me start with you and your theme here. Those words are very deliberate: reckoning, reflection, and renewal in this moment.
That is right. And that is the reason why we decided to program this way, build a program around the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. And I knew at some point in the season we wanted to do Mahler's Fifth Symphony, and pairing it with the Copland was, I think, the right thing to do. And they both have to do exactly as you said, with renewal and reckoning. It's a new era. That's what Lincoln is referring to. And Mahler is also thinking for his own self. It's a new way of composing. So he actually had to revise the work, and he did it in New York. So there is an American connection. In 1911, he was rewriting again the piece because he wasn't happy with the way it came out.
Well, Amanda, let me bring in you. You've been on the show many times now. We've talked so many times about poetry and prose and the power of words. Where do words come into this place with Copland's piece? Lincoln's own words, of course.
I think first and foremost, it's indicative of the times that we're currently living in. I think one of my favorite lines is the beginning line where he says, "Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history." And at the time, Lincoln is warning that those decisions of the time were for civil war and slavery, that it will define the nation forever. However, we're still inside of that history and not outside of it. Systemic racism didn't disappear. It's evolved. Political and policy decisions today, like education policies, voting access, is still very evident today, as well as people want to distance themselves from their past, but still benefit from the systematic structures that are in place.
Well, Francisco, this is what we love to talk about, what the arts can do and how people can maybe understand and feel the themes that Amanda was just talking about through a different way into it. In this case, it's music. How do you see that marriage of those words, those themes with what Copland wrote?
Well, the arts in general, and particularly music, have a way of touching the human soul directly. And there is plenty of evidence, not only evidence, but experiences that we all have had when you confront a beautiful painting or a beautifully spoken word or a fantastic, wonderful, powerful piece of music that really stirs something. And by the way, there is a precedent for the Copland being a catalyst in revolution. In 1957, I was born in Caracas, Venezuela. In 1957, we were under different dictatorship then. And Copland conducted his piece for a performance. And that very last minute, the person who was Marcos Pérez Jiménez, who was the president at the time, he came in late and sat in the first row. And when the words were spoken of government of the people, for the people, by the people, the audience went crazy. Oof. And that was a very powerful moment. And people actually talk about it as being a catalyst for the revolution that deposed Marcos Pérez Jiménez in 1958. So there is something in the air, something about this piece that is so powerful. And the Mahler Symphony, of course.
And Copland wrote this when he was blacklisted, or had wrote it prior,
yes, yeah.
Because of course it was during World War II, again, another time when freedoms are being scrutinized and obliterated in different circumstances. So has this piece, knowing all of this history, and then the very visceral description you just gave, has it always lived with you?
Definitely, particularly the last words. The very closing sentence, of the people, for the people, by the people, in whatever order I mix them up. And in regards to the Mahler Symphony, it's such a direct emotional contact with you. It's a piece that doesn't let you sit still for a moment, including the beautiful Adagietto, which is the fourth movement of the piece, that Mahler wrote as a love song for his wife. It's a beautiful piece.
And both are about beauty in some regard.
Mm-hmm. And beauty and the triumph of the human spirit. Because that's the last movement of the Mahler. It's all about, dark times are behind. Now it's all sunshine.
Well, Amanda, I'm wondering what this is like for you to read Lincoln's words, and especially paired with this music. So often in the past, we've talked about your own writing, your own creativity. This is how different is it for you to step into this lane?
It's definitely different, but it's been an honor thus far working closely with Francisco and being able to perform with an orchestra. If I had told you that the little girl in me is jumping up and down, anybody that knows me knows the choirs.
Francisco is vociferously shaking his head right now. Nodding his head, I should say.
I love choirs and I love orchestras. So for me to even be able to bring this to life, and then also the rich history of all of the narrators.
You just skipped ahead. I was just about to go there. Yeah, Eleanor Roosevelt, James Earl Jones,
Yes.
Maya Angelou.
Yes.
This huge array of people.
Michelle Obama. And one of my favorites that doesn't get mentioned a lot is Felicia Rashad, who played on The Cosby Show.
Mrs. Huxtable.
Yes.
Known to us, many of us.
And Heather Cox Richardson just did it in Tanglewood last season.
Right.
And Amanda Gorham. Mm-hmm. Amanda Gorham was also a narrator. So to be in that lineup is just... it's almost like unreal.
And Aaron Copland himself narrated with Leonard Bernstein conducting. So yeah, it's quite a powerful piece. It really is.
Amanda, did you want to try a little bit of it now? I know that you came prepared.
I did actually, because I know how we.
You're not going to want me to sing Mahler's Symphony now.
If you would like to.
Francisco's voice is amazing. So the first stanza is, this is the full text of the Lincoln portrait. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. This is what he said. This is what Abraham Lincoln said. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We of this Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance can spare one or another of us. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. We, even we here, hold the power and bear the responsibility.
Those are the words of being recited by Amanda Shea from Lincoln's Portrait, which will be taking place with Boston Civic Symphony. Their America's 250th anniversary concert at Jordan Hall this Saturday at 8. I'm also joined by Francisco Noya, the Boston Civic Symphony's music director. Francisco, if you can also remind us, just when people arrive and they see who is on stage, that's also very significant. For people who aren't as familiar with the Boston Civic Symphony, who is it comprised of? What do you do?
The Boston Civic Symphony started in 1924-25. That was the first season. So we just celebrated our 100th anniversary. Hard to believe, and no matter what people tell you, I was not there for the first concert. But it's an organization that I'm very proud to be part of, because it's comprised of a mixture of amateur musicians, very advanced students, and some members of the professional community. We have, since the beginning, have the honor of being part of the training of young musicians. And right now there are three Boston Symphony members that are alumni of the Boston Civic Symphony, and it has been from day one. So we're very proud to be part of that aspect of music education, which is the finishing touches, let's call it that, for a professional career. And also it provides opportunity to very, very, very well-trained, very good amateur musicians to make music at a very high level.
What happens when people come together? By the way, you just mentioned the BSO members, but also Yo-Yo Ma Bernstein, also early alum of this program.
Lenny Bernstein played the piano when he was still at the Boston Latin School. He played the piano in a concert of the Boston Civic Symphony. Yo-Yo has performed with the symphony as well. Like I said, a number of professional musicians that are all over the world. We actually received a note last year from somebody who is a professional violinist in Germany, that when she was in training here, she played in the Civic. So I'm very, very happy and very proud to be part of this.
And what happens when, I derailed my own question by mentioning some of the famous alum, but what happens when these groups come together with varying levels of experience, and how does it become inspiring and not intimidating to take that stage?
I think that in general we have a very good, very cohesive group of musicians playing with us. Everybody's very nice to each other. So, and I definitely foster that atmosphere. We're not here to make everybody feel uncomfortable. We play at a very good level, and everybody is contributing something to the orchestra. So we go through the same rehearsal process that a professional orchestra will go through. We take a little bit longer, but we aim for the final result to be indistinguishable from what a professional orchestra could do.
Amanda, how will you come into this? What is your prep like for understanding this music, knowing your timing, and then getting yourself into these words, as I assume an actor might?
That's a really good question. I mean, Francisco drives a hard button.
It's not me, it's Copland.
Francisco has equipped me tremendously throughout this process. They have actually contacted me a month prior too. So I've been able to study, I've been able to read, I've been able to listen intently, because it's not just a spoken word artist just reading somebody else's words. Yeah. It's the emotion behind that. And Francisco has guided me so beautifully through that piece. And we're still in training as of right now. We've had 4 sessions scheduled thus far. So I feel really prepared. I'm really excited, but I am a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. And I think nervousness is just the excitement taking over. The space is beautiful. I've been able to see videos of the orchestra practicing. So I've been very involved in the process. I don't feel as though I'm going in unprepared. If anything, I'm just really excited to do it. And I can't believe we're already here on Saturday.
You don't need to be nervous. Excited, yes. Nervous,
excited, yes.
Well, I always think that nerves are good. They bring that last bit of energy that you might need. I was struck by the research that you talked about doing what really surprised you, or have you really hung on to as you've looked at what Lincoln wrote in the times in which he wrote them, and again, what he was really conveying before his own audience?
I think, honestly, for me, it's legacy, and it's also history, to be honest with you. To be able to dive into this piece in this way and just seeing our history and it being also the 250th anniversary, it just shows me how much more work we need to do. It's very emotional for me, honestly, because back then when Lincoln was saying these words, my people weren't free yet.
Francisco, when you were looking at all the pairings that you could make with Copland, you landed on Mahler. We talked about the beauty and we talked about the evolution, but what made you ultimately realize that these really are, even though people might just think of them as so distinct, that they belong together?
One of the main things that came to my mind was Mahler's own words, where he's saying, let me give you, become a little geeky here about Mahler and symphonic writing. Mahler wrote the first 4 symphonies inspiring songs. So the very first symphonies that he wrote were all about singing and about song, particularly a collection of songs called the Wunderhorn. The 5th symphony is a departure from that. It's the first symphony that he wrote that is purely about symphonic music, with a little exception for the adagietto, but we'll get into that later. So Mahler himself is saying a new kind of music needs a new approach. And that's why he kept revising and revising. And the final revision that he did, like I told you before, he finished it in New York City when he was working with the New York Philharmonic. That is a version we're performing.
And there's a pretty substantial narrative arc just within his own piece, what we're hearing, what we're feeling through this symphony.
Correct. He divided the piece into, let's call it 3 chapters. There's 5 movements for 3 chapters. The first 2 movements are paired together. And funny note, even when Mahler was writing, kept in his diaries, the duration for each movement, he always did 1 and 2 together, so we don't have a timing for one movement alone. There's both of them together. So that's very meaningful right there. So the first 2 movements are a funeral march and a very stormy, angry, desperate cry. Then the third movement is all dance. It's based in 2 Austrian dances, the Ländler, which is a country dance, and the Waltz, which is a very refined city dance. So the way he puts both of them together, it's just fantastic. Then he writes his love song, which he wrote as a declaration of love for Alma Schindler, who later became Alma Mahler. And then the last movement is all the redemption of everything that we've seen. And he makes little quotations from previous movements, including quotations from the adagietto. And you can actually picture yourselves right now, this portion there, they're sitting there already married, talking to each other and remembering what the courting was like.
Amanda, let me give you the last word. And this is to go back to what you were just saying, too, when you said that your people would not be on stage in Lincoln's time when he wrote them. As you're doing this, cognizant of the 250th anniversary of this country, where we've come, but where we also find ourselves now, are you thinking about these words optimistically? Or what's your tone and mood going into this?
Well, me personally, I'm definitely thinking about them optimistically. I really want to see our history not keep repeating itself, obviously. At the same time, in order to embody this piece, I want to be able to kind of channel what he might have been feeling when saying these words, as well as harmonizing it with the orchestra, of course, because when you are here and you're experiencing it, you will be able to feel how the music carries the words. And that, to me, is powerful. So as long as I do that, I feel like I've done my job.
Well, it is going to, if I'm to judge the energy in this studio right now for what you're bringing this weekend, this is going to be a phenomenal concert.
It will be.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Congratulations, an early congratulations to both of you, and thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much.
The Boston Civic Symphony is marking America's 250th anniversary with a concert at Jordan Hall this Saturday at 8. The program brings together Mahler's Symphony No. 5 and Aaron Copland's Lincoln Portrait. To learn more, go to the Boston Civic Symphony's website. Francisco Noya is the Boston Civic Symphony's music director. Amanda Shea is an acclaimed spoken word artist who will be narrating Lincoln's Portrait. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Coming up, an approach to architecture where more is more, where development gives back to the community instead of draining it. That conversation is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
old Soviet cartoon character is still popular in Russia today, a mouse named Chiburoshka.
Everybody watched this character. He is the main character of, I would say, late Soviet childhood.
But he's more than a silly cartoon. Chiburoshka's identity and role in Russian society stir up heated debate. Hear why next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Subaru of New England. The all-wheel drive 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid is designed for New England terrain. Subaru retailer locations at subaruofnewengland.com.
Support for GBH comes from you and from Cambridge School of Culinary Arts.
Through our sponsorship, we're able to participate in such events as the GBH Food and Wine Festival.
Sean Leonard, Executive Director.
A great event that puts Cambridge Culinary in front of the listeners and is really great affirmation that we're hitting the right notes and reaching our community through GBH.
To learn more, visit gbh.org/sponsorship.
Whether you prefer to read, listen, or watch, however you get your news, the GBH News app is your home for coverage of the issues that matter most. Download the GBH News app today on the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Architecture shapes more than skylines. It shapes how we live, what we value, and what kind of future we imagine. Alan Ricks has spent his career testing that idea in the real world through hospitals, memorials, housing, and public spaces designed by the architecture and design firm MASS, or Model of Architecture Serving Society. It's the practice he co-founded with Sierra Bainbridge, where architecture is approached as something that can change how people move through daily life by working for and with the people it's designed to serve. In the new book, Seeking Abundance, which he co-wrote with Bainbridge, they argue for building in a way that, as he writes, creates a future where both people and the planet can flourish, where design gives more back to the land, to communities, and to the future. Alan Ricks joins me to talk about it all. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's really great to see you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
I am such a fan of your firm's work and all the good that you do because of how you do it. Of course, the outcome is always pretty brilliant and staggering, but let's just start with your book is called Seeking Abundance. How do you define abundance?
It's a great question. Abundance is definitely having a moment, and we're hearing about it all the time. Sierra and another one of the principals at Mass, Jeff Mansfield, were teaching a studio at the Harvard Graduate School of Design that they talked about as seeking abundance. And they thought about it really broadly. But I think what we've gotten excited about is the ecological definition of abundance. And that's when a species reaches a count where it thrives in harmony with the other species. So it's not it does have limits. You can exceed it where you start to cannibalize things and have negative impacts. And so we really like that idea of balance or equilibrium where all species can thrive.
Well, you give three examples. You go in depth in three examples of relatively recent projects in the book, starting with a primary school in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it's a fascinating study in how you look at the land and how your firm, along with community members, finds its place in the land.
Really interesting project in one of the most remote places on Earth. And we were working with the African Wildlife Fund, and they were building schools to promote conservation. This was an area where the bonobo ape lived and was threatened. And because of its remoteness, it really forced us to work with what was available locally. So one of our architects, Andrew Brosey, moved there. You fly to Kinshasa, take a propeller plane to a small village, then 5 hours by motorcycle into the jungle. And he worked with local craftsmen and laborers to harvest all of the materials from within just a few kilometers of the project. And that really focused us to think about what are the resources that are available locally. And we uncovered a way of thinking about this to promote economic impact while also thinking about preserving the environment.
Because the alternative, of course, as we see in our own communities, is Builders know how to build, they know where to get the things to build them, and they build them. And you just upend all of that, as you say, by going to places and talking to people, working with the craftsmen, and basically each time are you rethinking how to build?
It starts by asking, where do the things we build with come from? And once you start unpacking that, you see that our system is really rife with exploitation, and that building is inherently extractive. We can't build without taking these natural resources. So we have to be really thoughtful about trying to minimize that impact. But what we really talk about in the book with Sierra, who's a landscape architect, is that it's through landscapes that we can actually start to regenerate and heal our planet.
I love how you looked at termite mounds and you saw potential there.
For the Alima project, that we made it out of earth, and they actually experimented by using the different soils, adding different additives to it to think about how we can increase longevity.
When you're working with communities, you also come to employ the craftspeople. Everybody comes together as a collaboration. What do you find comes out of that when you're all having these discussions and you're not imposing preconceived notions of building on a place when you arrive there?
I think it really comes down to a number of different things that we're wanting to accomplish. One is that we really want projects to feel rooted in place, to feel reflective of their context. And so by thinking about the beauty of the materials and the beauty of the craft and labor from there, it can really feel connected to that place. But it also comes back to one of the original provocations from when MASS was founded by a group of students at the Graduate School of Design when we were volunteering with Partners in Health in Rwanda. And they prompted us to try to think of every choice as an opportunity to have impact. So when we're working in these places, we want to try to keep as much of that money. Building projects are some of the biggest investments made in places. How do we keep as much of that economic impact in the community that these projects are trying to serve?
You do something that I think is pretty extraordinary in that you have your own construction firm through the firm.
Well, we've always tried to just do what was needed. So it wasn't necessarily strategic, but what we saw was it was often hard to implement these novel construction methods in remote places. And so we have gone from a group of architects to being incredibly multidisciplinary, having all the engineering disciplines, into creating a construction company. And actually, we built all three projects in the book: the Ellen DeGeneres campus for the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund, as well as the Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture. So during the height of the pandemic, actually, we had over 2,500 employees under the construction company, which required all of these other things that we never would have imagined having to do, running, a public health operation, among other things.
And as you document in the book, this is about landscape. It is about the building itself. It's also about the interiors, desks, chairs, if it's a school, a hospital, other interiors. What happens after the project is built and that employment has happened and people have been lifted up with their jobs and their crafts and their collaboration?
Well, it's interesting because we started making furniture and designing furniture for many of the same reasons. We were having to import cheap, poorly made, often plastic products that then would break and then wind up in the landfill. And so actually going back to the idea of building with what's available is about building for longevity. It's something that you could actually repair. And so it's creating these new industries. And again, we're looking at the whole supply chain. So how are we building with regenerative materials, more woven textiles, sustainably harvested wood, things like that? But one of the greatest impacts is when we think about that lifespan beyond the building after the ribbon has been cut. And that's one of the things I think we're often proudest of, is the lasting legacy. So now you have these guilds of masons or rammed earth contractors that have gone on to create their own companies and are replicating some of these methods all over the country. And in the case of RICA, the agriculture university, the government actually asked us to join a working group to translate some of those principles into the building code. So our team of engineers actually worked with a working group to update the building codes and show safe methods of building with earth.
I'm speaking with Alan Ricks. He, along with Sierra Bainbridge, co-founded MASS, which stands for Model of Architecture Serving Society. We're talking about their new book. All of these projects, all of these methods that we've been discussing are in this new book, Seeking Abundance. Alan is also co-executive director at MASS. You also have your principles for your firm in each project, and one of them, you've talked about this, is regeneration. How do you ensure that happens, and how does it get baked into each project, each survey of the land?
Well, these projects in the book are pretty unique because they're in largely rural sites, and we have large plots of land, which allowed us to actually look at how can we rebuild biodiversity. It starts with what type of grasses, and then you have to build up this succession of the habitat that can host. I like to tell the story about the gray-crowned crane, a really majestic bird native to this part of the world that had migrated away from one of these sites. And so we're trying to think of what chain of events can we start today that can lead to the possibility of the gray-crowned crane coming back. But we also have to think about it in terms of the buildings. Our materials come from landscapes. Is the way that is being harvested, manufactured, transported having a positive impact? Unfortunately, as the supply chain has become increasingly opaque and globalized, that is really rife for chances of exploitation. We see that in terms of labor, forced labor in our building supply chains, as well as the degradation of our planet. And so we have to start asking these questions and making that more transparent so that we can make choices that can have a positive social and environmental impact.
It was really extraordinary to understand that you're doing all of this in Africa, and we don't see a lot of this being done in Boston, for example. So can these lessons be applied to the United States, or have we gone just so far down our system of building and development in this country that it's hard to rethink how we do things?
Oh, it's absolutely just as relevant here in the U.S., and we're working on projects all over the U.S. that are asking the same questions. I think what we've maybe been able to show in Rwanda is where we can push that to its limit, where we're taking control of the entire process. But it's still about asking the same questions. Minimize the negative impact, and then how can we think about the role of landscape to actually regenerate? And we've seen, many examples, including here in Boston with examples of Miyawaki forests. This idea of rebuilding biodiversity can happen on a very small scale. It can happen in your front yard. It can happen in the medians of the road. So there's plenty of opportunity to embrace these principles anywhere in the world.
And you talk in the book about where we should be going, that we talk a lot about reducing carbon footprint and being very green, but that really isn't enough, especially at this point.
That's exactly right. I mean, and that's why I say, buildings are extractive. We can work really hard to lessen our negative impact, but not erase it. And that's really where this role of landscape comes in. And Sierra and our landscape studio are really interested in working at really big scales. How do we think beyond individual sites, beyond even political boundaries? We're working on a project with the government of Rwanda to actually expand Volcanoes National Park, where the Fosse Project is located nearby and where the silverback gorillas, mountain gorillas live. And what does it mean to operate at that scale, kind of transnational boundaries? That's the kind of ambition we need to be thinking about. We have some interesting projects in the U.S. One's working with the Wind River buffalo conservation in Wyoming. So trying to do very similar things where we can actually start to rebuild these landscapes and make them more hospitable to the many different species we hope can thrive.
You just have to have a will. You find that's shifting?
This has been an interesting year or so where I think some of these things are being challenged. I think when we look globally, we've seen huge momentum in the last couple of decades and real interest in these ideas. And so I think when you look at the discipline of landscape architecture, this is really where the focus is. This, we're not, I wouldn't say this is a kind of novel point of view. I think what we need, though, is it's not really about having the design capabilities. We have that. We have the expertise to do this. We made this film, we called it a tenth of the time, that we could actually rebuild biodiversity in the tenth of the time it took to degrade it. So it is possible, but we do need major investment in this, and that has to come from governments through both regulation as well as incentives, and that can really help bring these ideas to scale.
Well, your book fills us with hope, and I will also say it's just gorgeously produced too. Gorgeous photography. Your projects are brilliant. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on the book.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
With Sierra Bainbridge, Alan Ricks co-founded MASS, which stands for Model of Architecture Serving Society, and they co-authored the new book, Seeking Abundance. He is also co-executive director of MASS. Alan Ricks, thank you again. And thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library for a wild pas de deux. Guitarist Reeve Gabrels will be here. He's a member of The Cure and a one-time David Bowie collaborator. He joins us with choreographer Mike Hall-Strohmile to talk about their work for Boston Ballet. Plus, speaking of architecture, Mahesh Das is here with innovation underway as California rebuilds. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered is coming up this afternoon at 4, with Marketplace at 6:30. But first, get a global view of the news with The World. Up next, here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Lowell Institute, Dog Show, an evening of poetry with former U.S. Poet Laureate Billy Collins, presented by the John F. Kennedy Library, March 30th at 7. Registration